Welcome, listeners, to another intriguing episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. I'm your host, Roger Heilig, and today we've got a really gripping story lined up for you. But before we dive into today's tragic tale, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. It's a fascinating read which you can find on Amazon and Audible. If you think you know everything about JFK's assassination, think again. This book opens up a whole new perspective on how that singular event rippled through American society. Now, back to today's episode. We're turning our attention to one of Hollywood's most tragic stories, the murder of Rebecca Schaeffer. For those who might not be familiar, Rebecca Schaeffer was a talented young actress who starred in the TV show My Sister Sam. She had a bright future ahead of her, but it was cruelly snatched away by an obsessed fan in 1989. Now, you might be wondering, why are we talking about this? Well, her tragic death led to groundbreaking changes in stalking laws across the United States. It's a sobering reminder of how laws sometimes have to catch up with the realities of our troubled world. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's rewind to the late 80s. Picture a vibrant young actress with an infectious smile and a world of opportunity at her feet, until fate, or rather a dangerous obsession, intervened. The story of Rebecca Schaeffer is a mix of Hollywood dreams and nightmares, and unfortunately, it's a tale that had to be told to make sure others could be protected. Through today's episode, we'll look at her life, the chilling details of the fan who took it away, the day that forever changed Hollywood, and the legal transformations that followed. It's a story as haunting as it is crucial, and by the end of our journey, you'll understand just how significant it was in shaping the laws we have today to combat stalking and protect privacy. Alright, let's get started and pull back the curtain on the life and legacy of Rebecca Schaeffer. Let's set the scene and get to know Rebecca Schaeffer, a name that should ring a bell for any 80s TV enthusiast, particularly fans of the show My Sister Sam. Picture this, it's 1986 and on CBS, an audience is falling in love with Patty Russell, the charming, spirited younger sister to Pam Dauber's character, played by none other than our very own Rebecca Schaeffer. It's not just her on-screen charisma that makes her special, it's her real-life aspirations and sheer talent that had Hollywood buzzing. Rebecca Lucille Schaeffer was born on November 6, 1967, in Eugene, Oregon, and you could say she was practically destined for the limelight. Growing up in Portland, she initially dreamed of becoming a rabbi. Quite the deviation, isn't it? But the allure of the silver screen soon took hold. This dreamer had big ambitions. At the tender age of 16, Rebecca's career took its first notable leap when she signed with a modeling agency in New York. This serendipitous decision led to her first major break. Gracing the covers of magazines and landing commercial gigs, she swiftly found her place in the world of modeling. This, however, was just the stepping stone to her greater passion, acting. Hollywood, with all its glitter and drama, was calling her name. Enter My Sister Sam. The CBS sitcom was Rebecca's ticket to stardom, and boy, did she seize that opportunity. She played Patty Russell, a lovable yet mischievous teenager who moves in with her older sister in San Francisco. Rebecca's natural charm and wit made Patty an instant hit with audiences, and the show's first season soared in the rankings. She had that relatable aura that made everyone feel like they knew her, like she was America's kid sister. But My Sister Sam wasn't just a job for Rebecca, it was a gateway to broader horizons. Hollywood started to notice. Critics and fans weren't the only ones charmed by her. Big names in the industry began seeing potential for a budding film career. Rebecca had an expansive vision for herself, roles that would challenge her and stories that would inspire many. It wasn't long before she landed film roles. One particular highlight was her part in the 1989 black comedy scenes from The Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. The industry buzz was that she was poised to become the next big thing, and it's evident why. Rebecca wasn't just about the look. She had depth, a compelling screen presence, and a constant drive to refine her craft. But beyond the cameras and scripts, Rebecca was also known for her kindness and genuine nature. She remained grounded, effortlessly maintaining a balance between her rising stardom and her personal life. She was the type of friend who remembered birthdays and lent a sympathetic ear. In a city known for its fair share of superficial connections, Rebecca Schaeffer's sincerity shone brightly. It's essential to remember that Rebecca was more than just an actress and model. She was a young woman in the prime of her life, filled with dreams and aspirations. She talked about wanting to work with directors like Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg someday. She envisioned roles that would stretch her abilities, from comedy to serious dramas. Rebecca's story, so brilliant yet so tragically brief, offers a poignant glimpse into the hopes and potentials of a life stolen far too soon. In our next segment, we'll delve into the darker part of her tale, a tale that intertwines her promising journey with the sinister obsession of a disturbed fan. So stay with us as we explore the depths of this tragic narrative, honoring Rebecca's legacy while seeking understanding in the chaos that ended her life. Alright folks, let's dive into the murky waters of obsession and see how the life of Rebecca Schaeffer was tragically intertwined with a fan who couldn't let her go. So, who was Robert John Bardo? Imagine someone who's repeatedly failed to find a sense of purpose or connection in life, and you've got a bit of an understanding about him. Bardo was born on January 2, 1970, in Tucson, Arizona, into a large family. He was the youngest of 7 siblings, which sometimes translates to a lot of competition for attention, something Bardo reportedly struggled with. From an early age, Bardo grappled with mental health issues. He spent some time in and out of psychiatric institutions, illustrating the severity of his internal struggles. Yet, as with many obsessions, Rebecca became the one thing he could fixate on, a beacon, if you will, in his tumultuous life. His obsession didn't start with Rebecca Schaeffer, though. Before her, his target was Debbie Gibson, the teenage pop sensation. He even attempted to meet her, scanning TV Guide for shows she might attend. But Rebecca caught his eye when she landed her role on the TV series, My Sister Sam. To understand how he slid from harmless fandom into deadly fixation, we need to look at his escalating behavior. Bardo was not your run-of-the-mill fan. He was an ardent consumer of everything Rebecca related. We're talking about someone who collected magazines, recorded TV shows, and wrote numerous letters. His fervor only increased with time, spiraling into a dangerous preoccupation. At one point, he even hired a private investigator to find out where she lived. That's how fixated he was. Bardo's letters to Rebecca went from adoring and complimentary to intensely critical and aggressive over time. One letter, in particular, hammered on about a scene in which Rebecca appeared in bed with another actor in the film Scenes from the Class Struggle in Beverly Hills. For Bardo, this was a betrayal. On July 18, 1989, Bardo's obsession reached its tragic climax. Armed with a handgun, a weapon he'd managed to acquire despite his mental health history, he traveled to Los Angeles. On that fateful day, he took a bus to Rebecca's apartment in West Hollywood. Using the information provided by the private investigator, he managed to reach her doorstep. The first attempt saw her deny him, politely asking him to leave. But Bardo was nothing if not persistent. He returned an hour later, and when Rebecca opened the door again, Bardo pulled the trigger, shooting her point blank. Just like that, a bright star was extinguished, leaving the world and her loved ones devastated. In the aftermath, Bardo was quickly apprehended. He had essentially confessed to the crime before anyone even started looking for him. He was found pacing along a Tucson interstate, waving down cars, almost as if he were seeking a twisted sort of validation for his heinous act. Bardo's trial garnered massive media attention, shining a glaring light on the gaps and flaws in the system. His mental health issues were brought up, and the argument was made that somewhere along the line he had fallen through the cracks, allowing his delusions to fester unchecked. However, the focus remained on the undeniable fact that Rebecca had become a victim of a relentless and destructive obsession. Bardo was eventually convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While justice was served, the episode left lingering, painful questions about how such a tragedy could happen in the first place. This tragic event was not just a personal catastrophe, but also a societal wake-up call, leading to significant changes in the legal framework around stalking. Rebecca Schaeffer's case forced a critical evaluation of how we view and handle obsessive behavior, especially in the digital age where personal information can be alarmingly accessible. In the next section, we'll delve into the legal aftermath of this tragedy, and how Rebecca's untimely death catalyzed substantial changes in stalking laws, forever altering how society seeks to protect its most vulnerable members. Stay tuned. On that fateful day, Bardo traveled from Tucson, Arizona to Los Angeles with a singular, deranged mission: to confront Rebecca Schaeffer. As the morning sun warmed Hollywood, Rebecca was in her apartment, preparing for a crucial audition for The Godfather. Around 10:15 a.m., Bardo arrived at her doorstep holding a letter and an autographed photo. When Rebecca opened the door, she was greeted by the stranger she didn't recognize. He attempted to engage her in conversation, presenting himself as just another fan seeking an autograph. Rebecca, always gracious and kind-hearted, politely told him to leave. She had no idea he was carrying a gun in his back pocket. You would think a rejection would send an obsessed fan packing, even if only for a day. But Bardo's mind was far from normal parameters. He didn't see her dismissal as a deterrent. Rather, it was a trigger. He went across the street to a diner, fueled his determination with a quick meal, and readied himself mentally for what he would do next. An hour later, he knocked on her door again. When Rebecca opened the door for the second time, she must have been surprised, maybe even irritated. Before she could react, Bardo pulled out his handgun and shot her point blank in the chest. The bullet punctured her heart, and with that singular, heartless act, Rebecca Schaeffer's life was cruelly snuffed out at age 21. The aftermath of the tragedy saw an outpouring of grief from fans, friends, and the entertainment industry at large. The horror of the event and Rebecca's tragic end rippled through Hollywood. Colleagues who once worked with her expressed their shock. The very streets of LA felt heavier, as though weighed down by the collective sorrow and solemn reflection of what had just happened. News of her murder was everywhere. It became a grim headline around the globe, sparking conversations about celebrity safety, privacy rights, and the perils of fan obsession. Vigils were held, and tributes poured in celebrating the short but impactful life of Rebecca Schaeffer, a young actress taken too soon, whose potential was snuffed out by senseless violence. As investigations proceeded, details about Bardo's troubling past and obsessive patterns came to light. Those horrifying facts spurred immediate outrage and raised serious questions. How could someone so obviously troubled have easy access to not only personal information but also lethal weapons? Why was it so simple for the mentally unstable to find and hurt public figures? The public outcry demanded change, and not just in the superficial sense. Rebecca's senseless death was a clarion call, urging the need for stricter laws around stalking, better security for public figures, and an overhaul of how personal information was managed and shared. Rebecca Schaeffer's tragic murder was much more than a celebrity newsflash. It was a sobering wake-up call. But out of this profound sorrow and unimaginable loss came a movement, one that would lead to significant legal reforms and forever alter the approach to and understanding of personal safety, especially for those in the public eye. And while Rebecca's life was ended tragically, her story continues to serve as a powerful reminder of the stakes involved when obsession crosses dangerous lines. Now, let's delve into how the tragic murder of Rebecca Schaeffer led to significant changes in stalking laws. Before Rebecca's untimely death, stalking wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been. In fact, California, where Rebecca lived and worked, had almost no legal framework to address it. You see, pre-1990s, the law generally didn't do much to protect victims from someone who might be following, harassing, or invading their privacy, unless the harasser had already committed a crime like assault or trespassing. When Rebecca Schaeffer was killed by Robert John Bardo, it became painfully clear that this lack of legal protection was a fatal flaw. How could someone get so close to harm this young star right outside her own home without any red flags being thrown up? Well, it all came down to the deficiencies in the laws at the time. The impact of Rebecca's case reverberated rapidly, and by 1993, all 50 states had enacted anti-stalking laws. The federal government also chimed in with the Violence Against Women Act in 1994, which included provisions against stalking and made it a crime to cross state lines to stalk someone. This really was a watershed moment in acknowledging that non-physical forms of harassment could lead to incredibly dangerous outcomes. Part of these changes included enhancements to California's penal code, allowing restraining orders specifically designed for stalking cases. These restraining orders provided victims with a legal tool to keep their stalkers at a distance, ideally preventing any escalation. It also authorized law enforcement to act more decisively, stepping in before the stalker could cause harm. The need to draw a line between privacy and public information came into sharp focus because of Bardo's use of DMV records to locate Rebecca. In response, the Driver's Privacy Protection Act was passed in 1994. This law made it illegal for DMV employees to disclose private information from driver's records. So no longer could someone casually request an address just by knowing someone's name and birth date. But the legislative response didn't stop at just legal constraints. It also spurred awareness and advocacy, changing the way society views stalking and obsessive behaviors. Advocacy groups formed, hotlines were established, and educational programs were launched in schools and workplaces to help people recognize the signs of stalking and understand the legal avenues available to protect themselves. Rebecca Schaeffer's murder forced both legal experts and the public to confront the very real dangers posed by obsessive fans and stalkers. Laws that might once have seemed reactionary or overly cautious gained widespread support and brought tangible changes in people's daily lives. It was a profound shift from a laissez-faire attitude to a proactive stance in ensuring safety and privacy. To sum it all up, Rebecca's tragic story underscored the critical need for laws that could preemptively shield individuals from harm. Her death brought about robust legal changes that transformed how seriously stalking is taken, not just in California, but across the entire United States. Her legacy includes these important reforms that help protect countless others from becoming victims of similar fates. Stay with us, because in the next section, we're going to delve into the lasting impact Rebecca's case had on society. How did these new measures reshape the public's understanding of privacy? And what kind of ongoing efforts ensure that her legacy continues to protect future generations? Don't go anywhere. Rebecca's tragic death cast a long shadow, one that has continued to shape the way we think about privacy, celebrity safety, and the legal protections for individuals. But beyond the legal reforms and heightened awareness, Rebecca's legacy lives on in numerous ways, making her story one of change and reflection. In the immediate aftermath of her murder, the shocking nature of the crime ignited a public outcry that eventually led to significant legal reforms. California responded swiftly, becoming the first state to enact anti-stalking laws. The new legislation defined stalking as repeated, unwanted pursuit and harassment of an individual, combining it with credible threats of violence. This wasn't just a law, it was a societal acknowledgement that Rebecca's life and death mattered. Other states followed suit, and soon, federal stalking laws were also put into place, drawing a line in the sand against those with obsessive fixations. These laws have been a substantive step forward, but the battle is far from over. Many advocacy groups continue to work tirelessly, pushing for more robust protections and better enforcement. Organizations like the National Center for Victims of Crime and the Stalking Resource Center offer resources and support to individuals who find themselves the target of unwanted attention, often drawing upon the precedent set by Rebecca's case to underline the importance of vigilance and comprehensive legislation. Beyond the realm of law, Rebecca's murder underscored a crucial aspect of modern life: how fame can be a double-edged sword. The age of social media has only magnified this, making it easier for fans to access details about their idols' lives, but also making it easier for those with harmful intentions to gather information. We've seen a renewed call for better protection measures, not just for celebrities but for anyone whose public presence puts them at risk. It's no longer just about actors and singers. Today, influencers, journalists, and even politicians navigate complicated relationships with their followers, balancing engagement with the imperative of safety. In Hollywood and other hubs of fame, there's been a notable shift in protocol. Security measures for actors and celebrities have become more stringent. Security teams are a common part of celebrity life now, more so than ever before. The entertainment industry periodically examines its own role in balancing public access and personal privacy, often citing Rebecca's case as a cautionary tale in the importance of keeping certain boundaries. Rebecca also left a quieter but profound legacy of kindness and ambition that those who knew her strive to keep alive. Friends and family often speak about her genuine warmth, intelligence, and the promise she had. In her memory, scholarships and charitable initiatives have been set up to support young actors and aspiring performers, ensuring her spirit lives on through the opportunities provided to others. Additionally, every mention of Rebecca Schaeffer in public media serves as a sobering reminder of the fine line between admiration and obsession. Documentaries, articles, and podcasts, much like this one, continue to tell her story, amplifying the voice she was silenced from using. Educational programs now incorporate discussions on stalking, ensuring that the next generation is better informed and prepared to handle such challenges. Ultimately, Rebecca's legacy is a tapestry woven into the cultural and legal fabric of our society. She is remembered not only for her time on My Sister Sam but for the real, systemic change her death catalyzed. Each step towards better legal protections, each media story examining the dangers of obsession, every young actor given a chance in her name, these are the threads that make up her enduring legacy. So, as we reflect on Rebecca's story, it's crucial to remember her vibrant life, tragically cut short, and the powerful wave of change it summoned. Here's to hoping the burgeoning awareness continues to grow, fostering an environment where no one, famous or not, has to live in fear of someone else's obsession. Through remembrance and continued vigilance, Rebecca Schaeffer's legacy will always serve as a beacon pushing towards a safer society for all. Well folks, we've covered quite a journey today, haven't we? From the bright beginnings of Rebecca Schaeffer's promising career to the dark and tragic day that took her life much too soon. We explored the unsettling story of Robert John Bardo, the obsessive fan whose dangerous fixation led to such a heartbreaking outcome. And we didn't stop there. We delved into the nitty-gritty of how Rebecca's death was the catalyst for significant changes in stalking laws, changes that have undoubtedly offered greater protection to countless individuals. Rebecca's legacy stretches beyond her talent and charm on the screen. Her story invoked meaningful legal reforms and continues to resonate within the conversations about privacy and celebrity safety, demonstrating how one person's tragedy can affect real, positive change. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into the Rebecca Schaeffer case, I think you'll be fascinated by our next episode, where we crack open the chilling tale of the Zodiac Killer. Why did this elusive figure remain at large for so long? What are the theories, the secrets, and the latest developments? You won't want to miss it. Before we wrap up, a big shout out to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. It's available on Amazon and Audible, and trust me, it's a must-read for anyone intrigued by the ripple effects of historic events. Thanks again for lending me your ears. Stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the truth really is stranger than fiction. Until next time, this is Roger Heilig signing off. Welcome to Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig, your personal journey into the bizarre world of unsolved killings and mysterious stories. Today's spine-chilling episode includes Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe is available on Amazon and Audible. Strap in, because we're about to reveal the dark, enigmatic narrative of the Zodiac Killer. A dark stranger stalked the streets of late 60s California, leaving a trail of coded messages, taunting notes, and unanswered questions. Whether you're a seasoned true crime fan or a curious newbie, today's program will take you through the spooky maze of one of America's most notorious unsolved cases. Let's get started. The late 1960s in California, an era of groovy vibes, flower power, and a strong undercurrent of social upheaval. The Golden State was a cultural revolution hotspot, from the sun-soaked beaches of Southern California, where surfers chased the perfect wave, to the streets of San Francisco, which echoed with protest songs and appeals for peace and love. It was a place brimming with life, energy, and a hint of defiance against traditional conventions. In 1967, the Summer of Love drew tens of thousands of young people to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury area, where they embrace counterculture and reject the establishment. Music festivals like as Monterey Pop featured memorable performances by Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and The Who, cementing California's status as the birthplace of rock and roll. Meanwhile, Los Angeles was the center of the entertainment industry, generating films and television shows that influenced American popular culture. However, there was a darker aspect to these lovely photos. The late 1960s also saw tremendous social upheaval and conflict. The civil rights movement was at its pinnacle, and anti-Vietnam War protests sometimes devolved into violent conflicts between demonstrators and police. The tension was evident, and headlines frequently included reports of political assassinations, violent protests, and growing crime rates. In this climate of both enlightenment and mayhem, the Zodiac Killer launched his epic spree. California, with all of its allure and promise, became the chilling setting for one of the most elusive and terrifying serial killers in American history. The Zodiac capitalized on the instability of the times, instilling dread among many and leaving police authorities perplexed. Imagine it. Northern California, with its foggy evenings and meandering highways, provided the ideal setting for crimes that would be etched in true crime history. People in the tranquil cities of Vallejo, Napa, and San Francisco witnessed a series of savage and seemingly random attacks that shattered their placid communities. The Zodiac's selection of victims and places seemed almost comical, yet it was terrifyingly effective. Young couples parked in lovers' lanes were among the first victims, their calm moments disturbed by the abrupt outbreak of violence. The killer's attacks became increasingly random and savage, creating an environment of anxiety and dread. Everyone was a potential target, and no one felt completely protected. The local media began to buzz with dramatic headlines, and the Zodiac took advantage of this by sending mocking letters and cryptic messages to newspapers. The public was frightened and morbidly captivated. The letters contained ciphers that, if solved, would reveal the killer's identity. They were published in newspapers, and everyone became an amateur detective, racing against time to decipher the signals and apprehend the maniac. Despite the severe situation, the 1960s attitude of communal cooperation and activity influenced how individuals responded. Neighborhood watch organizations developed, and locals came together to share information and defend each other. It was a time when the distinctions between good and evil became apparent, and people were forced to confront the unnerving reality that danger may wait just around the corner, no matter how sunny the day. In conclusion, the late 1960s in California were a time of contrasts, brightness and darkness, pleasure and dread, hope and fear. The Zodiac Killer arose against this chaotic and revolutionary backdrop, permanently altering people's sense of security in their daily lives. The stage was set for a mystery that still perplexes and intrigues us decades later. Okay folks, let's begin the Zodiac Killer's horrifying narrative with his first known attack, a night that set off one of America's most perplexing and terrifying serial killer investigations. Picture this, December 20th, 1968. We're in Vallejo, California, a little quiet hamlet on the northern side of San Francisco Bay. Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, both high school students, decided to go on their first date. Oh young love. They had planned to attend a Christmas concert at Hogan High School, but they never made it. Instead, they slipped over to a small section of Lake Herman Road known as a lover's lane. This gorgeous, isolated stretch was ideal for teenagers seeking some peace. But on this frigid December night, every pretense of romance was dashed. Around 11:15 p.m., they were sitting in David's Rambler station wagon when a mysterious man approached them. Eyewitness accounts are unclear. Some claim there was an argument, while others report it was silent and creepy. What is undisputed is that the attacker fired a shot into the automobile, striking David Faraday in the head. He died instantaneously. A promising life was ruthlessly cut short. The Vallejo Police Department and Solano County Sheriff's Office launched a full-scale investigation, but the lack of a clear motive baffled them. They spoke with witnesses who had seen the couple earlier that evening. Classmates, acquaintances, family, anyone who could provide a lead. However, the mysterious figure that attacked David and Betty Lou appeared to have fled into the night. The media swiftly caught up on the issue, with local newspapers covering the horrible murder widely. Rumors began to circulate, with some believing it was a vindictive lover or a troubled individual holding a grudge. However, no one could have imagined at the time that this was the start of something much bigger and far more dangerous. Remember guys, this is the late 1960s. There are no mobile phones, no social media, and no rapid networked information exchange. News spread slowly, and police coordination across departments and jurisdictions was far from immediate. Despite the police's best efforts, leads quickly turned cold. The neighborhood was in shock, struggling with the terror that had unexpectedly entered their peaceful lives. They had no idea the Zodiac was making his terrible debut, and he was only getting started. So, with one heinous act, the Zodiac Killer laid the groundwork for his reign of evil. His premeditated moves, the disjointed and seemingly random killings, would develop patterns and instill dread not only locally but throughout the country. Ah, the fabled letters and ciphers of the Zodiac Killer, those perplexing messages that sent shivers down Californian spines and left cops scratching their heads. Let us delve into these tantalizing conversations that both taunted and scared. Our enigmatic fiend made his literary debut in August 1969, when he sent a series of letters to several newspapers. Consider this scenario. You're drinking your morning coffee and reading the San Francisco Chronicle when you come across a strong, bombastic letter from a self-proclaimed killer. What a nice way to start the day, right? The first batch of letters was distributed to 3 newspapers: the San Francisco Examiner, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter revealed a piece of a cipher, a cryptic puzzle, which the Zodiac demanded these newspapers post on their front pages, or he'd go on a kill spree over the weekend. This was not your ordinary complaint letter to the editor, guys. This was a declaration of horror wrapped in a riddle. The first cipher, known as the 408 symbol cipher, was very notorious. Amateur sleuths and professional cryptographers were left frustrated by the complicated series of symbols and letters. At least, that was the intention. It turned out that, while the code was confusing, it was not unbreakable. Within a week, a teacher and his wife had cracked the code. What's the message? Zodiac brags about his passion of murdering, which is quite disturbing. "I like killing people because it is so much fun," he stated. Not exactly Shakespeare, but he made his point. If the ciphers didn't pique your interest, his subsequent correspondence certainly did. The Zodiac was nothing if not consistent, reminding everyone of his lethal schemes. He routinely sent letters explaining his atrocities, which sometimes included disturbing information known only to the killer and the authorities. A small murder memoir, if you will. The Zodiac's letters were a horrible combination of nursery rhyme simplicity and mysterious brutality. In his Exorcist letter dated January 29, 1974, he classified the horror film The Exorcist as the best satirical comedy I have ever seen. Believe me, Roger Ebert was not. The letter concluded with a twisted signature, a cross circle, his preferred insignia. Let us not forget the daunting 340-character encryption transmitted on November 8, 1969. It took 51 years for sleuths to properly decode it, courtesy to the advancement of current computing power. Unsurprisingly, the message continued his habit of selfish and terrifying self-praise, with a sprinkling of incoherence that even Zodiac fans couldn't understand. These letters muddied the waters, giving paradoxes and false leads that perplexed investigators. They depicted a killer who liked the psychological game, living off the terror and bewilderment he instilled. Each correspondence served as a breadcrumb and a red herring, obscuring the trail while keeping everyone focused on his macabre game. To summarize, the Zodiac's communications were just as important to his mythology as his violent actions. Each letter and cipher became the foundation of his public persona, a haunting reminder of his sinister actions and warped desire for infamy. Through them, he carved himself into the fabric of criminal history, guaranteeing that the horror he instilled would reverberate long after the final letter. Stay tuned as we go deeper into the heart of darkness that was the Zodiac Killer's reign, investigating the subsequent attacks that only added to the legend. Now, let's get into the horrifying details of the Zodiac's confirmed attacks. The Zodiac Killer did not stop with his initial attack. Oh no, his reign of terror persisted, leaving a warped legacy that endures to this day. Following the initial attack on December 20, 1968, in which David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were tragically ambushed, the Zodiac struck again on July 4, 1969. This time, the location was Blue Rock Springs Park, near Vallejo, California. In this unsettling episode, 2 young lovers, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mayhew, were sitting in a parked car, having a quiet, yet late-night moment. Out of nowhere, a figure approached with a spotlight, briefly blinding them before firing fire. Darlene, however, did not survive the attack. Despite his serious injuries, Michael lived to tell the authorities about the terrifying experience. His survival provided a key aspect to the case. Fast forward to September 27, 1969. This time, the Zodiac Killer's deadly playground was Lake Berryessa in Napa County. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were sitting by the water when a cloaked person approached. The perpetrator tied them up before repeatedly stabbing them, as if it were a horror movie scene. Brian survived the event, but Cecilia died from her injuries 2 days later. What makes this attack especially torturous is the Zodiac's audacity in leaving a letter scribbled on Brian's car door outlining the crime. His mocking signature, a cross-circle symbol, and the dates of his previous murders. Sick, perverse, and completely brazen. The horrific murder of cab driver Paul Stein in San Francisco's Presidio Heights area occurred just 2 weeks later, on October 11, 1969. This time, the Zodiac departed from his typical pattern of assaulting couples. Paul Stine's murder was exceptionally audacious. The Zodiac shot him in the head and then mutilated him, removing a piece of his bloodied shirt to transmit as evidence to the authorities. During this incident, a critical mistake was made. Witnesses saw the killer. Sketches were created, and descriptions matched emergent police sketches from earlier sightings, providing the public a visual representation of the dread they were experiencing. Talk about relaxing. Each crime scene bears disturbing commonalities, as well as terrible innovations. Whether shot or stabbed, indoors or out, the Zodiac never repeated his identical strategy, increasing the sense of panic and perplexity. Each crime left an indelible imprint of precise planning and uncanny calm, a predator with an unquenchable desire for public attention. Michael Mayhew recalls the killer's voice with its distinct lift and purported accent at Blue Rock Springs. At Lake Berryessa, Brian Hartnell described the strange, executioner-style hood with the glasses clip and the formidable knife he held with such icy accuracy. In Presidio Heights, the deliberate, almost leisurely manner in which he destroyed Paul Stine's shirt and nonchalantly walked away imprinted a frightening image of a calm, uncatchable guy on the public psyche. These tragic incidents did more than just add to a sad count. They solidified the legend. Each incident, with its own horrible twist, formed the lore and added layers to the Zodiac's terrifying mystery. He wasn't just a murderer. In his mind, he was staging a devilish opera of death that captivated everybody who witnessed the tragedy. His ability to change, adapt, and outwit others made him nearly mythical, a modern-day boogeyman. Interestingly, despite the diversity in his approaches, some commonalities emerged, such as targeting couples in isolated places and attacking at important times like holidays. The planned combination of persistent brutality and novel wickedness created a throbbing narrative, fueling the media frenzy and disrupting any semblance of public calm. The Zodiac did more than just kill his victims. He plagued an entire generation, causing a ripple effect that would span decades and beyond geographical lines. Thus, each subsequent attack not only added to the mystery, but also cemented his status in the annals of legendary serial killers. The Zodiac, like a horrible painter leaving terrifying brushstrokes, developed a macabre portfolio that evoked both dread and intrigue. It's indisputable that the Zodiac's later strikes, with their hideous daring and frightening accuracy, cemented his position in the dark corridors of criminal history. The legend was based not just on the body count, but also on the unpredictable horror, the unrepentant taunting, and the never-ending game of cat and mouse with the authorities. And this is where the Zodiac killer thrives, not only by murdering people, but also by tormenting society as a whole. Let's take a look at the intriguing characters that have figured prominently in the Zodiac investigation throughout the years, our primary suspects. When it comes to a mystery as intriguing and infuriating as the Zodiac killer, there are plenty of suspects. Some were considered due to circumstantial evidence, some due to unusual behavior, and a few were simply unlucky to be in the wrong location at the wrong time. However, despite the countless suspects, none have been definitely tied to every part of the Zodiac's tortuous path of terror. Let's start with the name most closely identified with the Zodiac case, Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was a troubled schoolteacher who appeared to fit many criteria, perhaps too many according to some. He was ambidextrous, which could explain the variation in Zodiac letters. He had a Zodiac brand watch and even hinted at ideas that sounded very similar to the Zodiac's method. However, despite being a big figure of attention for decades, there was always something lacking. Handwriting experts were unable to definitively link him to the Zodiac's cryptic messages, and DNA extracted from a stamp on one of the letters did not match Allen. Even his close associates, people who knew him well, had differing judgments regarding his guilt. Then there's Lawrence Kane, a suspect whose name isn't as well known outside of Zodiac-related circles, but he's still worth mentioning. Kane himself had a shady past, including a brain ailment that may have hampered his impulse control. Some witnesses claim to have seen him near crime scenes, and his physical appearance was strikingly similar to composite sketches created from eyewitness accounts. However, just like Allen, convincing proof was elusive. Richard Gakowski was the third, and perhaps most prominent suspect. Unlike Allen and Kane, Gakowski was never considered a top suspect by the police, but web sleuths and amateur detectives have made persuasive arguments for his involvement. Gakowski worked for a newspaper, and some Zodiac messages were delivered to its headquarters. In several aspects, his writing style resembled that of the Zodiac, and his appearance was reasonably consistent with the composite sketches. However, like with Kane and Allen, no substantial evidence has ever tied him to the crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. We also need to add Ross Sullivan, who worked at the Riverside City College Library, where one of the Zodiac's probable early victims, Sherry Jo Bates, spent time before being slain. Sullivan had a history of mental illness, wore military-style boots that matched footprints discovered at crime locations, and went missing from work shortly after Bates' death. Despite strong circumstantial evidence, no definitive link was been established between Sullivan and the Zodiac letters or the proven Zodiac murders. And don't forget Earl Van Best Jr., a suspect brought to prominence by his own son in the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All, which was later turned into an FX documentary series. His son, Gary Stewart, believes Van Best is the man beneath the mask. Stewart draws spooky parallels between Van Best and the Zodiac. Physical appearance, handwriting, and even the period of Van Best's life correspond to the Zodiac's active years. Still, detractors believe that the data offered is insufficient to support a confident allegation. Despite these well-known names, the definitive Zodiac identity is as fuzzy as a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Each of the suspects identified has friends and detractors, but the conclusive proof required to bring any of them to prison has proven frustratingly difficult to obtain. None of the DNA, handwriting analysis, or other investigative developments have established a strong enough connection to claim definitively that they have located their man. Finally, the hunt for the Zodiac remains a source of curiosity and frustration. The overwhelming number of suspects and the absence of clear proof indicate that the Zodiac, whoever he was, managed to keep one step ahead of everyone. He captivated the public and perplexed detectives, leaving behind a mystery for the ages, one that, to this day, remains unresolved. The interesting realm of popular culture. It's fascinating how certain stories entrench themselves so strongly in our collective psyche, and the Zodiac case is a prime illustration of this. This enigmatic person has cast a long and persistent shadow over American pop culture for decades. So let's look at how the Zodiac killer influenced movies, novels, and popular perception. First and foremost, Hollywood has never turned down a good mystery or mayhem story. Perhaps the most noteworthy cinematic dramatization of the Zodiac case was David Fincher's 2007 film, Zodiac, which starred Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey Jr., and Mark Ruffalo, and rekindled interest in the cold case. The film takes a careful approach to the investigation, replicating the laborious work of real-life reporters and investigators. Fincher's riveting, almost compulsive storytelling rekindled public interest and even inspired amateur sleuthing among viewers. However, the Zodiac has left his stamp on more than just the silver screen. This enigmatic killer has captivated the literary world as well. Robert Graysmith's publications, Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked, are regarded as essential reading for anybody interested in the case. Graysmith worked as a cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle during the Zodiac's reign of terror, and became one of the organization's most committed, if unofficial, investigators. His work has had a huge impact, fueling both the public's ravenous curiosity and the ongoing discussion about the case. And let us not forget about fiction. The Zodiac has inspired innumerable fictional works, both directly and indirectly. Consider Don DeLeo's Running Dog, or any number of detective stories in which the protagonist is pitted against a mysterious letter-writing killer who appears all too familiar. In thrillers and mysteries, the Zodiac archetype of the mocking, narcissistic killer appears repeatedly. The Zodiac has even made his way into the music industry. Did you know that several bands and musicians mention the Zodiac in their lyrics? His effect in darker musical genres is clear, whether through a passing reference or a thematic deep dig. Beyond art and entertainment, the Zodiac case influenced public ideas about serial killers. For many, he was their first exposure to the idea of a criminal mastermind capable of outwitting police enforcement and the media. The Zodiac's image as a sophisticated, cunning figure has shaped how we perceive real and fictional villains. In some ways, the Zodiac murderer paved the way for the celebrity serial murderer in American culture, a character that taunts, captivates, and frightens the public. This case has also had a significant impact on how we perceive law enforcement's ability to conduct such complex investigations. The failure to catch Zodiac has been both fascinating and frustrating. It serves as a constant reminder of human fallibility in the face of sophisticated criminality, a theme that has appeared in innumerable TV dramas, films, and books about crime and justice. Last but not least, let's discuss the internet. Online forums, YouTube channels, and social media have revitalized amateur detective work, making the Zodiac case one of the most closely watched and investigated mysteries in digital history. Thousands of individuals visit websites dedicated to the case, sifting through information, debating possibilities, and fueling their curiosity. It's almost like a worldwide, never-ending collaborative study. So, whether on television, in paper, in music, or online, the Zodiac is an enigmatic person whose story refuses to vanish into the annals of unsolved crime. This horrific mythology continues to inspire and influence, ensuring that the Zodiac killer mythos endures for future generations. Grab your tinfoil hats, because it's time to immerse yourself in the wonderfully strange world of Zodiac killer ideas and hypotheses. The Zodiac's violent crimes not only terrified the public, but he also left behind a trail of cryptic ciphers and taunting messages that have perplexed amateur sleuths and professional detectives for decades. And wow, have some theories evolved? Let's start with one of the more credible theories, Arthur Lee Allen. Allen's name has been floating around since the beginning, and there are numerous reasons for this. Allen, a convicted child molester known for wearing Zodiac-style timepieces, was first interrogated in 1969 and has since been the subject of numerous police investigations. Handwriting comparisons proved inconclusive, but there were a few strange coincidences. For starters, his physical appearance closely resembled composite sketches, and he owned a typewriter and teletype that were identical to those used by the Zodiac. Despite this, no concrete evidence ever tied Allen to the murders, and some believe his death in 1992 marked the end of the actual Zodiac. But wait, just when you thought things were calm, we get into the strange and unusual. How about Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber? Some see links between Kaczynski's mathematical prowess and the Zodiac's enigmatic ciphers. Both had a fascination with bomb schematics and a dislike for societal standards, but that's where their commonalities ended. Kaczynski operated in a different era and had a different motivation, not to mention that he was imprisoned during some of the Zodiac's active years. Still, it's a theory that comes up frequently in Zodiac speculation sites. Then there's the notion linking the Zodiac to a man named Richard Gajkowski. Gajkowski, a newspaper editor and film lover, had concerns about the case. Some think his voice matched a recording of the Zodiac made during a call to a TV show, and his timetable corresponds to the Zodiac's activities. Furthermore, Gajkowski's work as a journalist may explain the Zodiac's fondness for media attention. Interesting, yeah, but conclusive? Not exactly. We're not finished yet. Earl Van Best Jr. is another suspect who raises questions. His son, Gary Stewart, argues in his book The Most Dangerous Animal of All that his father was the Zodiac Killer. This assertion is supported by a striking likeness to the composite sketch and some coincidental evidence. Stewart also claims that his father's handwriting matched that of the Zodiac's letters, but experts remain divided. It wouldn't be a Zodiac conjecture session without delving into some pretty strange theories. What about a Zodiac satanic cult connection? Some conspiracy theorists claim that the Zodiac murders were part of a ritualistic practice by an underground satanic sect. Wild? Absolutely. Is there any evidence to back this? Not much. The Zodiac symbol, on the other hand, has linkages to many esoteric traditions, which provides just enough gasoline for conspiracy theorists. And if you think that's extreme, let's go interstellar. Yes, some people believe the Zodiac Killer could have been an alien. This argument is based on the idea that the advanced cryptography used in the Zodiac's letters was too sophisticated for humans. It's outrageous, yet it demonstrates how far some people will go to explain the seemingly inexplicable. Finally, we have the theory of numerous perpetrators. This one argues that the Zodiac Killer was not a single person, but rather a collective. This could explain the differing descriptions provided by witnesses, as well as the various tactics used in the killings. Perhaps there was a collective attempt to instill fear and disorder. It's a theory that supports the concept that such a sophisticated crime spree could be the result of multiple disturbed minds. So there you have it, everyone. The Zodiac Killer case is a Pandora's box of hypotheses, with anything from reasonable candidates to outlandish conspiracies. As long as the case is unsolved, conjecture will continue. And who knows? Maybe the next big break is right around the corner. Until then, we'll continue to speculate about the identity of the elusive Zodiac Killer. Despite the Zodiac Killer's cryptic and terrifying legacy, the investigation continues to this day. Let's take a look at the current situation. Technology has been a big changer in recent years, providing new hope for resolving this decades-old issue. One of the most significant breakthroughs resulted from advances in DNA science, namely a process known as genetic genealogy. You may recall that the Golden State Killer was identified in 2018 utilizing this exact strategy. Essentially, it entails comparing DNA from crime scenes to public genetic databases in order to identify probable familial links. Investigators were able to obtain partial DNA profiles from some of the letters ascribed to the Zodiac Killer. While these profiles aren't detailed enough to accurately identify a person, they do provide tantalizing clues that could help limit down the list of prospective possibilities. In 2020, a team of cryptographers claimed to have cracked one of the Zodiac's most infamous ciphers, the 340-character code delivered to the San Francisco Chronicle, causing another surge in enthusiasm. For nearly 50 years, this complicated tangle of symbols eluded all attempts to interpret, but the team was able to translate it using software and pure tenacity. The statement, while enigmatic and unnerving, did not reveal the killer's name, but did confirm his obsessive desire for publicity and fearmongering. This discovery reignited public and media interest in the case, giving another layer to the Zodiac's already enigmatic and sinister character. Furthermore, developments in forensic science have had an impact. Modern investigators are re-evaluating old evidence with new eyes and cutting-edge equipment. Fingerprint analysis, for example, has undergone tremendous advancements. Prints that were earlier deemed too smeared or fragmentary to be useful are now being re-examined using innovative techniques that reveal previously hidden features. In addition to technological developments, the network of armchair detectives is unwavering. Websites, forums, and social media groups dedicated to the Zodiac Killer are still buzzing with hypotheses, new material, and speculative analysis. These citizen sleuths frequently provide unusual views, finding previously unnoticed details or making connections that professional investigations may miss. Despite these hopeful advances, the Zodiac's true identity remains unknown. Some of the original suspects have died, and with each passing year, the odds of finding a living Zodiac decrease. But hope persists. Technology is always evolving, and each new improvement represents another possible breakthrough. As of today, the case remains a terrifying enigma, a decades-long game of cat and mouse. Who knows? Perhaps the solution is out there, waiting to be discovered by the next advancement in forensic science, or pieced together by a keen observer. So, while we may not have clear answers today, the pursuit of justice for the victims of the Zodiac Killer continues. Each day brings us closer to identifying one of America's most notorious criminals. Stay tuned, because the narrative is far from over. Thank you for checking into this episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. I hope you enjoyed our investigation into the Zodiac Killer case. If you caught yourself biting your nails or furrowing your forehead, your aim was done. Remember that today's episode is sponsored by Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. It's available on Amazon and Audible, so check it out if you're interested in conspiracies and historical riddles like I am. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and write a review so we know what you think. In our upcoming episode, we will delve inside the chillingly brilliant mind of none other than Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. You won't want to miss this. Until next time, stay curious, safe, and continue to examine the shadows. This is Roger Heilig, signing off. Welcome to Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. My name is Roger Heilig, and I'll be your guide on this exhilarating voyage through some of history's most intriguing and mystifying cases. First and foremost, a huge thank you to our sponsors, Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. If you are fascinated by the complexities of historical events and enjoy delving into conspiracy theories, this book is a must-read. It's a gripping look at one of America's most contentious periods, and it's available on Amazon and Audible. Today we'll delve into the gorgeous yet sad world of Hollywood legend Marilyn Monroe. From her rapid rise to popularity and her lasting impact on American culture, to the mystery circumstances surrounding her untimely death, we'll delve into the specifics and swirling storm of conspiracy theories. Was it indeed a suicide by overdose, or is there more to the story? Grab your magnifying glass, and let's uncover the mystery of Marilyn Monroe's death. Prepare for a voyage filled with charm, wit, and a dash of Hollywood glamour. Before we get into the intriguing circumstances surrounding Marilyn Monroe's terrible death, let us first introduce our sponsor. If you're captivated by renowned characters like Marilyn Monroe, A.M.'s Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever is not to be missed. Wolfe? This riveting book dives into one of the most startling events in American history, President John F. Kennedy's assassination, and examines its far-reaching consequences for our society. It's a riveting book that reveals levels of mystery and intrigue. You can get it on Amazon and Audible. So, if you want to add another mystery to your collection, go there and check it out. Marilyn Monroe. A name that evokes images of stunning beauty, enigmatic charm, and Hollywood splendor. Marilyn Monroe, more than any other icon, epitomized Hollywood's golden age. But let's take a step back and set the scenario, shall we? Marilyn, born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1, 1926, did not have the typical storybook beginning of a great star. She was raised in and out of foster homes and orphanages, having a difficult journey from the start. But perhaps it was this early adversity that inspired her amazing ambition and determination to overcome it all. By the time she was a teenager, Norma Jean had attracted the eye of a photographer while working in a munitions factory during World War II. This modest profession led to a modeling career, and she quickly dyed her dark locks platinum blonde and took on the stage name Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn's climb to celebrity was nothing short of spectacular. With her brilliant smile, distinctive voice, and on-screen presence that seemed almost otherworldly, she rapidly won the hearts of moviegoers all over the world. Her debut came in the 1950 picture The Asphalt Jungle, but it was her performance in All About Eve later that year that truly demonstrated her abilities. She became known as the Blonde Bombshell, a character she both adored and struggled with. Let's not overlook some of her most memorable roles. Marilyn starred in films such as Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, where she sang the timeless hit Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, and Some Like It Hot, where she played the lovely but complicated Sugar Cane. Her comedic timing, combined with her inherent charisma, made these movies memorable. Marilyn wasn't just a lovely face with curves. She was a trailblazer for women in the entertainment world. She questioned the established system and campaigned for better contracts, even starting her own production company, an unprecedented step for a woman at the time. Marilyn was determined to be taken seriously as an actor and not be pigeonholed into the dumb blonde caricature that Hollywood loved to impose on her. Her effect went beyond the silver screen. She was a fashion icon, and ladies all over the world tried to replicate her style. Marilyn Monroe had an unmistakable influence on American culture, molding standards of beauty, femininity, and even sexuality. She was more than just a movie star. She was a symbol of a period, a glittering, complex representation of 1950s and early 1960s America. But despite her brilliant achievements, Marilyn's life was fraught with difficulties. Her marriages to baseball great Joe DiMaggio and playwright Arthur Miller were tabloid fodder, failing to survive the strains of celebrity. Marilyn longed for family stability and personal satisfaction, despite the fact that she had never had children. Her struggles with anxiety, despair, and substance abuse were well documented, contrasting sharply with her on-screen personality. While many people remember Marilyn Monroe for her glamorous public persona, she was a very introspective individual with a tremendous desire for reading and learning. She studied acting with Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio in New York, interacting with literary greats and intellectuals while constantly working to improve her art and deepen her identity. So, as we look more into her tragic death, keep in mind Marilyn's indelible imprint on Hollywood and American society. She was a sparkling light who flashed brightly, albeit all too briefly, leaving an enduring legacy that continues to captivate imaginations today. There you have it, folks, Marilyn Monroe, the superstar renowned for her incandescent talent, striking beauty, and incomprehensible complexity. We've set the stage, but there's still so more to discover. Stay tuned as we investigate the mystery circumstances behind her terrible death. Marilyn Monroe's beautiful but tempestuous life came to an end on the night of August 4, 1962. Let's take a guided tour of the important moments and personalities involved in the final hours of the Hollywood icon's life. Marilyn spent the day in her Brentwood home in Los Angeles. That day, like many others, was a non-stop whirlwind of phone calls and visits. A surprise competitor for the scene? Eunice Murray is Marilyn's diligent housekeeper. She was more than simply a maid. She was a confidant, a secret keeper, and possibly an overly knowledgeable figure. Marilyn's close friends and advisors had contacted her at 7 p.m., and nothing seemed unusual. Peter Lawford, President John F. Kennedy's brother-in-law and a handsome actor, was a frequent caller. He anxiously tried to contact Marilyn many times that evening, but each time the line went dead. By 8 p.m., things had gone strangely quiet. Eunice Murray sensed a rising discomfort as she performed her nightly responsibilities. Around 10 p.m., she spotted a mild but distinct glow coming from Marilyn's locked bedroom, an abnormality that did not go ignored. The clock struck midnight, and Monroe's house was enveloped in an unnerving silence. Eunice Murray's anxiety became evident beneath a moonlit sky. Murray entered the bedroom about 3 a.m., driven by a feeling of panic, and peered through the window to catch a glimpse of Marilyn, who lay unmoving on her bed. This prompted an urgent call to Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson. This man was familiar with the personal labyrinths of her tormented psyche, and when he arrived, he discovered a motionless, unresponsive lady rather than an adored Hollywood starlet. Dr. Greenson burst through her bedroom's glass window and entered, hoping for hope but discovering a painful reality. Soon after, Marilyn's personal physician, Dr. Hyman Engelberg, was summoned. By the time he arrived, it was evident that Hollywood's brilliant diamond had lost its luster. Dr. Engelberg proclaimed her dead around 3:50 a.m., signaling the official end of an era. As one would imagine, the police were summoned to Brentwood. LAPD officers came, examining a scene already rife with rumors of scandal and a looming cloud of suspicion. The initial reports hinted at what would eventually become controversial: a bottle of pills and an apparent overdose. Barbiturates? That was the word of the day. Key individuals remained in the background, including her publicist and close pals. Their faces were furrowed with a mixture of fear and incredulity. Eunice Murray's statements would continue to shift, fueling curiosity and theorizing. She reported finding Marilyn at 3:30 a.m., but the timeframes were inconsistent. As dawn came over Los Angeles, the blanket of mystery grew thicker. This ordinary-looking night, laced with mystery, was engraved into history. Marilyn Monroe's terrible death was a velvet curtain closing on an unmatched life, surrounded by faces that would haunt her legacy forever. In those melancholy, bizarre hours, a slew of questions made their way into the public eye. What exactly happened behind the shut bedroom door? The individuals involved, ranging from her housekeeper to her doctors, would soon become entangled in the complicated web of Marilyn's rising existence and terrible death. So there you have it, a deconstruction of that terrible night, with each gesture and moment contributing to the ongoing chronicles of Marilyn Monroe's life and death. Keep this timeline in mind as we explore the whys and hows, facts and fictions of this fascinating story. Alright, let's go into the official cause of Marilyn Monroe's death. According to the official report, Marilyn Monroe died on August 5, 1962, of a barbiturates overdose, which was categorized as a suicide. Barbiturates are a form of sedative that was extensively administered in the past to treat anxiety and insomnia. Consider them an old-school solution for a disturbed mind or sleepless nights. Eunice Murray, her housekeeper, saw anything strange that night. Around midnight, Eunice noticed a light on in Marilyn's room and decided to check on her. She discovered Marilyn unresponsive on her bed, clutching a phone, with empty pill bottles all around. In a panic, Eunice summoned Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who arrived swiftly and shattered a window to gain access to the locked bedroom. Unfortunately, it was too late. Marilyn had passed away. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office conducted an autopsy, which revealed a high concentration of barbiturates in her system. To put things in perspective, the levels were well above what would ordinarily be considered a high dose for therapeutic purposes, enough to stop her heart and breathing. The toxicology report revealed that there was no sign of foul play or external injuries, leading to the conclusion that the overdose was purposeful. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the forensic pathologist who performed the autopsy, stated that the cause of death was acute barbiturate poisoning. Marilyn's mental health issues were well documented. She'd been dealing with anxiety, sadness, and crushing pressure as a result of her celebrity lifestyle. She took solace in medications, which regrettably resulted in a dangerous cycle. Dr. Theodore Curfey, the chief medical examiner at the time, officially classified her death as a probable suicide. However, there were certain abnormalities that raised questions. For example, the scattered finding timeframes, the involvement of various doctors, and the delay in alerting the police prompted some people to develop theories, which we'll discuss later. It's crucial to recall that, while the investigation indicated a possible suicide, the circumstances surrounding her death made many people uncomfortable. Marilyn was a very complex individual, and her terrible death just added to her intriguing legacy. The simplicity of the official cause does not sit well with everyone. However, for the time being, the authorities have delivered the hard facts. Okay folks, let's go into the tangled web of conspiracy theories that have transformed Marilyn Monroe's death from a tragic Hollywood story into the ultimate whodunit mystery. Prepare your tinfoil hats, because some of what we're about to discuss may just blow your mind. First, let's discuss the most renowned theory surrounding her death, one that is bigger than the Hollywood Hills themselves, the purported Kennedy connection. That's correct. Marilyn Monroe's association with President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Robert Kennedy, has fueled several stories. So here's how this theory goes. Monroe was allegedly involved in a love affair with JFK. The murmurs intensified after she sang Happy Birthday, Mr. President in that renowned, seductive voice at Madison Square Garden. The assumption currently holds that she knew too many state secrets. After all, pillow chat with the president could get quite intense, and that her knowledge became a problem. When Robert Kennedy enters the picture, things heat up. Some claim he attempted to silence Monroe, either out of brotherly concern or Cold War-era urgency. Was she threatening to reveal too many details about the highest office in the land? Did Bobby Kennedy pay her a visit the night she died, as some witnesses claim? Was a cleanup crew dispatched to clear any traces left behind? It's all very cloak and dagger, but no actual evidence has ever emerged. Then there's the mafia theory. Oh, why limit the suspect list? The mafia allegedly held a vengeance against the Kennedys, namely Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who was relentlessly prosecuting organized crime. This idea contends that the mafia staged Monroe's death as a warning to the Kennedys in a typical mess with us, and we'll mess with you scenario. Intriguing and frightening, right? Of course, any good conspiracy requires a far-fetched premise, and some believe Monroe was involved in espionage. According to the notion, she may have been involved with Soviet spies, becoming an unintentional conduit for information transmission. The list of suspects grows longer and more diverse by the minute. In another vein, some scholars believe Marilyn's psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, unintentionally played a part. According to this argument, Greenson's overuse of barbiturates combined with medications prescribed by other doctors resulted in a fatal cocktail in her system. Despite the fact that it was an accident, others say it was a sort of medical malpractice that borders on manslaughter. To complicate matters, some claim Monroe was simply tired of being a puppet for the Hollywood elite and powerful men in her life. According to some beliefs, she may have staged her death as a spectacular exit because any other method would not have garnered as much attention. Is this giving Marilyn too much credit for her meticulous planning, or is it acknowledging her as a mastermind? Opinions are clearly divided. Another strange but persistent theory is that Monroe was accidentally caught up in a political conflict larger than her celebrity. Some legends indicate she had a little red diary in which she recorded all she learned from prominent men. This diary, some claim, contained explosive revelations that made her a target. We also can't dismiss the ever-popular belief that Marilyn's death was really a cover-up for a failed attempt to revive her. Some say that when her housekeeper and psychiatrist discovered her unresponsive, they made a desperate but fruitless attempt to revive her. In this case, any cleanup was more concerned with constructing a narrative that would not ruin reputations than with concealing a murder. Whether it's spy games or panicked physicians, each idea regarding Marilyn Monroe's death adds a new layer of mystery. The truth is, we're unlikely to uncover every secret she's kept hidden. What we do know is that with her death, Monroe passed into myth, and myths are exactly what these ideas live on. Okay, conspiracy buffs, there you have it, a slew of hypotheses, each more complicated and dramatic than the last. Whether you believe in political intrigue, mafia drama, or an overdose plot, one thing is certain: the mystery surrounding Marilyn Monroe's death continues to captivate, perplex, and inspire countless debates. And here, my dear listener, is the art of a legendary conspiracy. Let us now turn gears and discuss the popular reaction to her death, as well as how it added to Marilyn Monroe's fame. Stay tuned. On August 5, 1962, news emerged that Marilyn Monroe had died, sending shockwaves around the world. Fans were devastated, and the media went into frenzy. The instant feeling was one of shock and sadness. Imagine the golden girl of Hollywood passing away at the age of 36. It was like waking up and discovering the sun had not risen. People gathered outside her Brentwood house to leave flowers and comments. The melancholy headline, "Marilyn Monroe Found Dead, Pills Near," appeared in the Los Angeles Times, while tabloids published speculative stories. Each one contributed to the mystery and heightened the emotional turmoil around her death. Within days, her death had escalated from a personal tragedy to a global cultural event. Marilyn was more than just an actor. She was a phenomenon. She embodied beauty, brilliance, and a certain vulnerability that made her unmistakably human. Her films drew millions of viewers, and her image appeared on posters and magazine covers around the world. But it wasn't just her looks or her film roles that propelled her to stardom. It was her charisma, her ability to appear attractive while also being personable. In the years that followed, the circumstances surrounding her death appeared to just add to her mythology. Enter the conspiracy ideas we explored before, each adding a new element to her account. These ideas portrayed her as a character imprisoned in a real-life noir film, rather than a victim of circumstances. Was she caught up in the dark web of political intrigue? Was she suppressed to protect important secrets? These inquiries transformed her into a symbol of insatiable curiosity and wonder. For the general public, Marilyn Monroe represented the fleeting nature of beauty and fame. Her personal and professional troubles were suddenly shown in a sympathetic light. Her sad death struck a profound chord, elevating her above the status of a movie star and transforming her into a moving human narrative. Fast forward to now, and Marilyn Monroe is as iconic as ever. New generations are discovering her through classic films, photos, and documentaries. Her legacy extends beyond the entertainment business to fashion, art, and pop culture. We can see her impact in the everlasting attractiveness of every platinum blonde actress who has appeared on screen since. Her mythos is so rich that learning more about her life and death is like adding a brushstroke to an unfinished work of art. Biographies, television specials, and even podcast episodes like this one attempt to portray some aspect of her bright, sad life. There's an enduring appeal in attempting to comprehend the riddle that was Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe achieved a sense of immortality after her death. Each untold story, each unresolved question solidifies her legacy as a Hollywood icon, and a sobering warning of the dangers that come with the bright limelight. Her legacy consists of her films, her beauty, her vulnerabilities, and the strange circumstances surrounding her death. She continues to enchant us, reminding us that legends don't always die. They live on in the cultural consciousness, endlessly fascinating and forever missed. Before we continue unearthing the layers of Marilyn Monroe's mystery death, let us take a moment to thank our wonderful sponsor. Have you ever considered how JFK's assassination has had an ongoing impact on American society? Look no further than Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. Available on Amazon and Audible, this book delves into the historical, social, and political ramifications of one of the most shocking occurrences in American history. If you enjoy a thrilling story with intrigue and deep analysis, this is a must-read for you. So head over to Amazon or Audible to get your copy today. Okay, let's return to the mystery of Marilyn Monroe's tragic death and the endless hypotheses that still surround it. Thank you for watching this episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. Today we looked into the mysterious and terrible death of the iconic Marilyn Monroe. From her climb to become a legendary Hollywood star to the unclear circumstances of her death, we journeyed through the night when everything changed, analyzed the official explanation, and explored some of the wild hypotheses that surfaced in the wake. It is apparent that Marilyn Monroe's impact on society and entertainment did not diminish with her sad death. In many respects, it strengthened her status as an enduring myth. And just wait until the next episode. we've got something similarly spectacular planned. We'll look into the legendary Black Dahlia case. Yes, that's right, murder, mystery, and a slew of mind-bending twists that have stumped investigators for years. It's one of those stories where the more you dig, the more mysterious it becomes, and I can't wait to share it with you. Before you go, remember to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media to remain up to date. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. It helps others discover the podcast and motivates us to bring you more exciting stuff. Until next time, I'm Roger Heilig, encouraging you to always keep one eye open. You never know what surprises await you just around the corner. Take care. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig, the show where we dive deep into some of the most shocking and perplexing criminal cases in history. This episode, and indeed our entire podcast, is proudly sponsored by Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. If you're a history buff or a conspiracy theory enthusiast or both, you'll definitely want to check it out on Amazon and Audible. Today, we're embarking on a journey that is as tragic as it is unsettling. We're going to talk about the Chris Benoit tragedy. If you're a wrestling fan, the name Chris Benoit likely brings a barrage of memories, both good and unbelievably harrowing. But even if wrestling isn't your cup of tea, this case is a roller coaster, and I promise you'll be gripped by the twists and turns. So, what exactly happened? On a seemingly ordinary weekend in June 2007, the world of professional wrestling was rocked to its core. Chris Benoit, a high-flying, technically skilled wrestler with a significant fanbase, was found dead, along with his wife Nancy and their 7-year-old son Daniel. What initially appeared to be an unspeakable mystery soon unraveled into a deeply disturbing narrative of a double murder-suicide. In today's episode, we'll break down this tragic story, segment by segment, to provide a nuanced and comprehensive account. We'll start by setting the scene and getting to know the man behind the controversy, Chris Benoit. We'll touch on his illustrious wrestling career, his public persona, and some personal anecdotes that provide a fuller picture of who he was. Then, we'll walk through the grimly fascinating details of how the tragedy unfolded, from the first moments of shock to the complex web of events that culminated in a devastating loss of life. We'll cover it all. The initial confusion within the wrestling community and the broader public reaction will set the stage. Following that, we delve into the specifics of the crime itself. We'll discuss what investigators found at the crime scene, the timeline of events, and the unsettling evidence that revealed how Benoit's actions led to this heart-wrenching conclusion. The media's response to the tragedy was immediate and frenzied, and we'll explore how both the press and the public reacted. The WWE's reaction, including their initial tributes and subsequent retractions, added another layer of complexity to an already bewildering case. Finally, we'll discuss the outcome of the investigation, including the autopsy results and the controversial theories that emerged in its wake. We'll finish off by examining the long-term impact on the WWE and the broader wrestling community, focusing on policy changes and the ongoing discussions around mental health and steroid abuse. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's take a deep dive into one of the darkest chapters in the history of professional wrestling. This is Restless Killers and Mysteries, and I'm your host, Roger Heilig. Let's get started. Chris Benoit, a name that sends shivers down the spine for anyone familiar with the world of professional wrestling. For those who are new to this, let me walk you through who this man was before the tragic events that etched his name into infamy. Born in Canada in 1967, Chris Benoit, also known as the Canadian Crippler and the Rabid Wolverine, began his wrestling journey at a young age. Inspired by the legendary Dynamite Kid, Chris sculpted his body and honed his craft, setting his sights on the grand stage of professional wrestling. He started his career in the late 1980s, gaining momentum and recognition in Japan and Mexico. Now, think of him as the wrestling equivalent of rock and roll. He was passionate, intense, and never did anything halfway. Benoit made his way to World Championship Wrestling, WCW, in the mid-90s, where he became part of the iconic Four Horsemen stable. This wasn't just any group. It was as if the wrestling gods had assembled their own Mount Rushmore. Benoit's intense, hard-hitting style elevated him to fan-favorite status, and he quickly earned a reputation as a wrestler's wrestler, meaning he was revered not just by fans, but by those within the industry as well. Now, the late 90s were a wild time for wrestling, and Benoit jumped ship to World Wrestling Federation, WWF, in 2000. The WWF, which later became WWE, was like the Hollywood of wrestling, all bright lights and big personalities. Here, Benoit truly made his mark, capturing multiple championships, including the big one, the World Heavyweight Championship. Imagine the Oscars, but with more body slams and steel chairs. His crowning moment came at WrestleMania 20 in 2004, when he won the World Heavyweight Championship in Madison Square Garden. It wasn't just a win, it was a tear-jerking, confetti-filled coronation that made fans believe in fairy tales. Despite his aggressive in-ring persona, Chris was known to be a quiet and somewhat reserved individual in his personal life. Fellow wrestlers often described him as a hardworking, dedicated family man who loved his wife, Nancy, and their son, Daniel, more than anything. Nancy Benoit, known to wrestling fans as Woman, had her own storied career in professional wrestling. Together, they were viewed as the quintessential wrestling power couple. Think of a royal family, but with more spandex and pyrotechnics. Benoit was no stranger to personal challenges. He suffered multiple injuries throughout his career and continued to wrestle despite them. His dedication was almost superhuman. Like a gladiator, he fought through pain and adversity. Lesser-known facts include his obsession with perfecting his craft and his admirable loyalty to friends. One particularly touching anecdote is how he stayed by Eddie Guerrero's side, his best friend, during Guerrero's difficult times. Their friendship was the stuff of legend, perhaps the wrestling world's equivalent of Batman and Robin, bound by camaraderie and mutual respect. But Chris Benoit's life wasn't just all about wrestling, steel chairs, and high-flying maneuvers. He was a man of simple pleasures. He enjoyed spending time with his family, playing with his son, and was known to be an animal lover, particularly dogs. Behind that fierce exterior was someone who, like all of us, longed for love and normalcy. So, who was Chris Benoit? He was a complex character both inside and outside the squared circle. He was a man who achieved greatness, but whose story took an unexpectedly dark turn. Before the tragedy, Chris Benoit was someone revered, respected, and celebrated in the wrestling world. And as we delve further into this chilling tale, it's essential to remember the man he was and the shadow he cast over professional wrestling. As we peel back the layers, you'll discover a story that's both tragic and unsettling, making you question the very essence of where talent and turmoil intersect. Stay with me as we dive deep into the tragedy that shook the wrestling world to its core. In the sweltering heat of late June 2007, the wrestling world was about to be rocked by a series of events so devastating, it would leave an indelible mark on the industry and its fans. Over a heart-wrenching 3-day period, one of the most admired and respected figures in professional wrestling, Chris Benoit, would go from hero to perpetrator in a tragedy that no one could have seen coming. It all began on June 22, 2007. Chris Benoit was scheduled to participate in a WWE event, but he unexpectedly canceled his appearance, citing personal issues. It wasn't an uncommon occurrence for athletes to pull out of events due to personal matters, so the initial reaction from his fans and colleagues was one of understanding and curiosity. Yet, behind the scenes, something much darker was brewing. Unbeknownst to many, Chris had already embarked on a path that would soon unravel lives. Over the course of these turbulent days, he would murder his wife, Nancy, and then their 7-year-old son, Daniel. The murders were carried out in chilling detail, with Nancy being slain in an upstairs room and the young Daniel following shortly after. Chris himself would end his life in the home, leaving behind a scene of utter horror and a flurry of questions. By June 24th, the air grew thick with concern. Chris had missed several appointments and had not made contact with anyone within his professional or personal circles. This uncharacteristic silence set off alarm bells, prompting WWE officials to reach out to local authorities in Georgia for a welfare check at the Benoit family home. When law enforcement arrived, the scene that greeted them was beyond macabre. It was tragically haunting. The initial shock within the wrestling community was palpable. Chris Benoit was not just any wrestler. He was a veritable titan of the ring, known for his technical prowess and dedication. His reputation was that of a family man, devoted to his wife Nancy, herself a well-known figure in the wrestling world as Woman, and their son Daniel. Friends, fans, and colleagues were left in a state of disbelief, struggling to reconcile the benevolent image they had of Chris with the monstrous acts he had perpetrated. The news broke slowly at first, with rumors trickling through the wrestling community before exploding in national headlines. At first there was hesitation, a reluctance to believe that a beloved figure could commit such unfathomable deeds. When the reality set in, it was like a bombshell. Social media sites, wrestling forums, and news channels buzzed with theories, speculations, and heartbroken messages. The shock spiraled into a collective mourning, compounded by the unanswered question, why? In the midst of this turmoil, the WWE quickly issued statements, expressing their sorrow and solidarity with the affected families. Vince McMahon himself, the face of the WWE, appeared on television to convey the gravity of the situation. Yet, even as they responded publicly, behind the staunch corporate facade, the organization had to grapple with a rapid reassessment of Benoit's legacy and their own handling of the crisis. And so, over these 3 days in June 2007, the wrestling world buckled under the weight of its darkest hour. What began as a quiet shockwave turned into a hurricane of grief and confusion, stirring thoughts and emotions that would persist for years. The initial shock gave way to deeper inquiries, as the community began digging into Chris Benoit's life, his mental state, and the possible triggers leading to this tragedy. Alright, folks, here we delve into arguably the grittiest part of our story today. the details surrounding that fateful June weekend in 2007, when the wrestling world was left in utter disbelief. So, let's set the stage. It all began on a Friday, June 22nd. Chris Benoit was scheduled to perform at a WWE event in Beaumont, Texas. However, Benoit never showed up. Uncharacteristic for him, given his reputation for being a hardcore professional. That absence drew the initial flags that something was seriously wrong. As the weekend unfolded, the full horror began to surface. Investigators later pieced together a haunting timeline of events. On that Friday, Chris Benoit murdered his wife, Nancy. Nancy was found in an upstairs room bound at the wrists and feet. The cause of death? Asphyxiation. Investigators concluded she had been strangled to death with a cord. The chilling part is that Chris Benoit didn't stop there. The next day, Saturday, June 23rd, their 7-year-old son, Daniel, met a similarly tragic end. Daniel was found in his bed, also having died of asphyxiation. He had several needle marks in his arm, reportedly indicating that Benoit had been injecting him with a severe painkiller, possibly to sedate the boy before taking his life. Grim, isn't it? There's something profoundly tragic about the idea of a child being involved in this nightmare. Then, on Sunday, June 24th, Chris Benoit himself took his life. He used a weight machine in his home gym to orchestrate his demise, using the pull-down bar in a manner that would ensure quick fatality via asphyxiation. Imagine the scene: a home, once filled with the sounds of life and ordinary family activities, now eerily silent and harboring secrets of unspeakable tragedy. The sheer brutality and cold, methodical manner in which these acts were carried out left the investigators shell-shocked. Both Chris and Nancy were found with Bibles placed beside their bodies, a gesture that perplexed many and added a strange dimension to the already tragic scenario. Could it have been a moment of remorse, a plea for forgiveness, or perhaps an eerie ritual meant to offer some solace in his twisted reality? Upon the discovery of the bodies on Monday, June 25th, subsequent search and investigations ensued rapidly. Investigators uncovered various prescriptions in the house, which is where the theory of steroid-induced rage came into play. Chris Benoit had a collection of steroids and other drugs, which led people to speculate about the impact of these substances on his mental state. The crime scene itself painted a horrific picture: walls imbued with anger, despair, and confusion. Even technology played an odd role in this story. In the early hours of Sunday, June 24th, Chris Benoit had sent out eerie text messages to fellow wrestlers, detailing his address and giving oblique mentions like the dogs are in the enclosed pool area, essentially sealing his final moments in a strange digital confession. Evidence collected later would prove disturbing. It's not just the physical remnants but the psychological imprints that Benoit left behind, a deranged chronicle of a man at his breaking point. Investigators spent months dissecting Benoit's medical records, mini notebooks filled with ramblings, and extensive interviews with friends and colleagues. Autopsy results revealed elevated levels of testosterone and traces of hydrocodone and Xanax, hinting at Benoit's ongoing battle with his mental health. Many theorized if this was a case of CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a brain condition commonly associated with repeated head injuries, a prevalent concern in contact sports like wrestling. We'll discuss more about this in the investigation and legacy segments, but it's a crucial point here as it might give a glimpse into Benoit's deteriorating mental state. The timeline, the methods, the unsettling calm with which Benoit executed these atrocities, each facet providing a piece of the morbid puzzle. A family, erased over a span of 3 days, a sport left to grapple with the horrifying aftermath, and a society forced to confront uncomfortable truths about idolizing flawed heroes. No doubt, the specifics of this tragedy read like a grim soap opera, blending a perfect storm of personal turmoil, professional pressures, and perhaps a lethal cocktail of chemical dependence. But it's these very details that help us endeavor to understand, to parse through the catastrophe, in hopes of grasping what might drive someone to such devastating extremes. When news broke on June 25, 2007, that Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel had been found dead, the wrestling world and mainstream media erupted in a whirlwind of shock and confusion. At first, many couldn't understand. How could this beloved wrestling icon, known for his dedication in the ring, be involved in something so horrific? The initial wave of media coverage painted Benoit as a tragic hero. News outlets reported the deaths as a mysterious incident, sparking immense speculation. In this digital age, social media went ablaze with tributes and heartfelt messages from fans and fellow wrestlers alike. It was an outpouring of grief, blended with confusion, as everyone speculated on what could have led to this tragic end. Over at WWE headquarters, the reaction was one of profound sorrow and disbelief. Chris Benoit was a heavy hitter in their roster, a man not just admired for his technique but respected for his work ethic. WWE Chairman Vince McMahon made the immediate decision to cancel the scheduled WWE Raw episode. Instead, the company aired a 3-hour tribute show in honor of Benoit, celebrating his in-ring accomplishments with clips and personal remembrances from colleagues. This tribute initially seemed appropriate as no concrete details had yet emerged, but the clouds of sorrow began darkening quickly as the horrific truth started to unfold. When police reports confirmed that Benoit was responsible for the deaths of his wife and son before taking his own life, the story took a dramatically different tone. The media quickly shifted gears, moving from sorrowful tributes to a detailed dissection of the monstrous acts committed by Benoit. Headlines morphed from "Wrestling World Mourns Loss" to "Benoit Family Tragedy and Strange Behavior Explained." The WWE found itself in a precarious position. Initially, there was some understandable foot-dragging. The show must go on. Mentality is the lifeblood of such organizations. But as more gruesome details were released, it became impossible for WWE to ignore or continue in their initial stance. They had to act, and quickly. In an unprecedented move, WWE retracted all celebratory content related to Benoit, erasing him from their history almost overnight. His mentions were scrubbed from websites, video archives, promotional material. Essentially, Benoit became a ghost of WWE's past. It was a dramatic, necessary step as the company tried to distance itself from the horrific shadow he had cast. The public response was a mixture of heartbreak and fury. Fans who had idolized Benoit felt betrayed, as if a family member had committed an unforgivable sin. There was a distinct split: those who tried to separate the man from the athlete, mirroring the initial media exchanges, and those who could see nothing but the dark acts overshadowing every wrestling move Benoit had ever performed. Grieving fans were left wondering how someone who seemed so disciplined and devoted could commit such unspeakable acts. Some turned to the media for answers, others simply wanted to forget. Debates on platforms like Twitter and Facebook became heated and personal, with each user interpreting the situation through their own unique lens. This tragedy also ignited a firestorm of scrutiny regarding the culture of professional wrestling itself. Questions arose about the physical and mental toll the sport took on its stars. The media delved into investigations on steroid use, severe head trauma, and concussions, elements speculated to have played a role in Benoit's shocking behavior. To some, Chris Benoit became a case study in the perils of untreated mental health issues. To others, this was proof of a sinister undercurrent in professional wrestling that needed to be addressed. The tragedy forced the entire industry to take a closer look at the well-being of its athletes. In the immediate aftermath, WWE's quick retraction and the media's exhaustive coverage were critical in shaping public perception. For many, the swift removal of Benoit from WWE history was necessary to keep the legacy of wrestling clean. For others, the ordeal sparked an everlasting debate over how we remember and reckon with our heroes when they fall from grace so catastrophically. Ultimately, the media reaction and public discourse following the Benoit tragedy became just as much a part of the narrative as the horrific events themselves, framing how we process and cope with such an unfathomable act within the tapestry of public consciousness. The investigation into the tragic events surrounding the deaths of Chris Benoit, his wife Nancy, and their son Daniel was intense and thorough. Let's dive into the details of what the authorities uncovered. The crime scene itself was a testament to the horror that had unfolded within the Benoit home. Authorities discovered the bodies over a 3-day period, with Nancy being found first in an upstairs room, bound and showing signs of strangulation. Daniel was discovered in his bedroom, also bound and apparently asphyxiated, seemingly while sleeping. Chris Benoit's body was located in the basement gym, where he had hanged himself using the pulley of a weight machine. Initial reports sent shockwaves through the wrestling community and the wider public. It seemed inconceivable that a man like Benoit, known for his discipline and dedication in the WWE, could perpetrate such a horrific act. As investigators pieced together the timeline, they found that the nightmare began on Friday, June 22, 2007. Nancy was killed first, followed by Daniel on Saturday. Chris Benoit then committed suicide on Sunday. This timeline exposed a methodical progression, each tragic act separated by hours or even a day, suggesting a deeply disturbed state of mind. Autopsy results provided a clearer picture of the circumstances. It was confirmed that Nancy's death was caused by asphyxiation, and toxicology reports indicated she had a sedative in her system, possibly to subdue her before the attack. Daniel's death was similarly attributed to asphyxia, but the results also showed elevated levels of Xanax in his body. This led to the assumption that the sedative was administered to him, likely to ensure he was unconscious when the act occurred. Chris Benoit's autopsy revealed heavy brain damage and heart abnormalities, conditions that raised further questions about his health and mental state. One of the most contentious points revolved around the condition of Chris Benoit's brain, examined posthumously by Dr. Julian Bales, a noted neurosurgeon. It was discovered that Benoit's brain displayed severe CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a condition resulting from repeated head trauma. CTE is known for triggering serious cognitive, emotional, and behavioral issues, and this revelation opened a Pandora's box of discussions about the impact of professional wrestling on mental health. Theories and controversies did not stop at the medical findings. Some speculated the influence of steroid use, given the presence of anabolic steroids and other prescription drugs found in Benoit's home. This led to a frenzy of debate over the culture within the wrestling industry, where performance-enhancing drugs were rumored to be widespread. WWE responded with their wellness program, intended to curb drug abuse among wrestlers, but critics argued it was a case of too little, too late. Public opinion was further splintered by discussions over how the WWE managed their stars' mental health and the pressures placed upon them to perform at increasingly high levels. The combined stress from personal loss, professional pressure, and potential substance abuse created a cocktail of disaster waiting to implode. Finally, investigators concluded that Chris Benoit had murdered his wife and son before ending his own life. Despite varied theories attempting to rationalize his actions, the motive remained elusive, shrouded in the complexities of a troubled mind and a physically deteriorating body. The investigators' conclusions painted a depressing portrait of a man driven to unspeakable acts by factors that may never be fully understood. The media storm and public reaction further highlighted the need for serious conversations about mental health, substance abuse, and the dark side of professional wrestling's glory. To this day, the Chris Benoit tragedy remains a chilling reminder of the hidden battles that individuals might face, unknown to even those closest to them. The horror of the Chris Benoit tragedy left an indelible mark not only on the WWE but on the entire realm of professional wrestling. The ripple effects from that catastrophic event transformed the industry in significant, and some might say, much-needed ways. Let's start with the immediate aftermath. The WWE had to reassess its policies dramatically. First up was their drug testing program. While steroid use and performance-enhancing drugs had long been a poorly kept secret in the business, Benoit's actions thrust the issue into an unwanted spotlight. Steroids were found in his system, and there were links to a physician who had been prescribing these substances to other wrestlers. As a result, WWE's wellness policy, which had already been established in 2006 following the highly publicized deaths of other wrestlers, received an overhaul. The program became stricter and more comprehensive. Random drug testing was ramped up, and the substances being tested for expanded. Wrestlers could no longer rely on a don't ask, don't tell mentality around drugs. WWE wasn't willing to take any more chances, not on its brand, not on its stars, and certainly not on its fans. Wrestler health and wellness became more prioritized than ever before. Beyond drugs, mental health came into sharp focus. Chris Benoit's mental state at the time of his crimes was scrutinized heavily. Post-mortem examinations of his brain revealed the kind of severe damage one would expect from someone much older, someone with dementia, due to the numerous concussions he had sustained while wrestling. This brought forth a serious discussion on the mental health risks professional wrestlers face, given the nature of their jobs. Concussion protocols were introduced, and WWE started to take a hard line on the kinds of moves that were allowed in the ring. The infamous chair shot to the head became a thing of the past. Moves and tactics that could potentially endanger a wrestler's cognitive health were systematically banned. Wrestlers were also given access to mental health professionals and encouraged to seek help when needed, breaking down the stigma that often surrounds mental health, particularly in such a physically demanding sport. The tragedy also exposed another dark side of professional wrestling: the massive amount of stress and pressure wrestlers face. A heightened awareness around mental well-being meant that wrestlers had to be seen in a holistic way, beyond their physical prowess and entertainment value. WWE began to offer counseling and other resources to deal with the intense and often brutal demands of life on the road, away from family for long stretches, and the constant pressure to deliver stellar performances. Such changes have had ripple effects across the industry. Other wrestling promotions, taking notes from WWE's revamped policies, have also started implementing more stringent health and wellness measures. It created a shift in how the wrestling community and its fans view a wrestler's career longevity and personal well-being. The macho, invincible persona often portrayed in the ring began to give way to a more nuanced understanding that these performers are, after all, human and vulnerable. While Benoit's actions can never be justified or forgotten, the silver lining, if there can be one, is the positive strides made in the industry's approach to health and wellness. More importantly, the tragedy opened up conversations that had long been swept under the mat. Today, fans see a wrestling match with the unshakable knowledge that behind the body, slams and suplexes are individuals with very real health concerns and lives that extend well beyond the squared circle. One cannot discuss the legacy without mentioning the change in how the WWE Hall of Fame is viewed. Chris Benoit's name was practically erased from WWE history books, an unparalleled move for someone who had achieved so much in the ring. This decision underscored the idea that character and actions outside the ring mattered just as much, if not more, than accomplishments within it. And let's not forget the important ongoing discussion on steroid use and its dangers. Wrestling organizations now openly educate their talents on the risks of anabolic steroids and similar substances. What used to be the dark underbelly of professional wrestling is now a topic tackled head-on, with a commitment to transparency and education. In conclusion, while the Chris Benoit tragedy remains one of the darkest chapters in professional wrestling history, it prompted a wave of crucial reforms. It forced the industry to take a hard look at itself, leading to necessary and overdue changes that prioritize wrestler health and well-being. Though the loss and horror cannot be undone, these changes are an effort to ensure that such a tragedy won't be repeated, marking a step in the right direction for the future of professional wrestling. And there you have it, folks. Today we've navigated through the deeply unsettling Chris Benoit tragedy, a dark chapter in professional wrestling and in the lives of those involved. We started by learning about Benoit's celebrated career and persona within the WWE. We then journeyed through the chilling sequence of events that took place over 3 harrowing days in June 2007, culminating in the horrifying discovery of 3 lives lost. We dove into the meticulous details of the crime itself, uncovering the evidence and timeline that painted a grim picture of that tragic weekend. We also took a closer look at the media's immediate response and the public's reaction, not to mention how WWE initially honored Benoit only to backtrack upon realizing the gravity of the situation. Moving forward, we explored the extensive investigation that led to the definitive conclusion that Chris Benoit murdered his wife Nancy and their young son Daniel before taking his own life. We touched on some of the controversies and conspiracy theories that emerged, adding layers of complexity to an already incomprehensible event. And finally, we examined the lasting legacy of this tragedy on professional wrestling. We discussed how it prompted significant changes in the WWE's policies regarding wrestler health and wellness, and shed light on critical issues like mental health and steroid abuse within the industry. If today's episode left you with more questions or sparked thoughts you'd like to share, I encourage you to reach out. Your insights and comments are always welcome. Before we sign off, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. If you're looking to dive into another intriguing piece of American history, this book promises a captivating read and is available now on Amazon and Audible. Stay tuned for our next episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig, where we'll unravel yet another baffling and dark mystery. Until then, keep your curiosity alive, stay safe, and thank you for listening. Welcome, dear listeners, to another thrilling episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. I'm your congenial host, Roger Heilig, here to guide you through history's most baffling, shocking, and jaw-dropping true crime stories and unsolved mysteries. Whether you're a seasoned sleuth or a newbie curiosity seeker, you're in for a ride brimming with intrigue and suspense. But before we dive into today's topic, a quick shout-out to our fabulous sponsor for this episode, Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. If you love diving into historical enigmas as much as I do, this book is your next must-read. It's available on Amazon and Audible, so grab your copy or download it today and get lost in the tantalizing threads of history. Alright, let's set the stage. Imagine a scene straight out of a spy thriller. A bustling international airport, unsuspecting travelers hurrying about, and a sudden, swift, and deadly attack that leaves the whole world stunned. Sounds like a movie plot, right? But today's story is no work of fiction. We're unpacking the cold-blooded assassination of Kim Jong-nam, the half-brother of North Korea's enigmatic leader Kim Jong-un. In February 2017, the world watched in shock as news broke out of Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Kim Jong-nam, a member of the secretive and powerful Kim dynasty, met his untimely end at the hands of 2 women wielding a deadly nerve agent. But who was Kim Jong-nam, and why did his life end so abruptly and dramatically? What does this tell us about the brutal lengths some will go to maintain power? And how did the international community react to such a blatant act of political violence? These are the questions we'll explore in today's episode, so make sure you're comfy and settled in. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single detail as we navigate through the twists, the motives, and the intricacies of this captivating case. Alright, time to dig in. Buckle up, because it's time to unravel the web of intrigue that surrounds the assassination of Kim Jong-nam. Let's get started. Alright folks, let's dive into today's riveting topic, the assassination of Kim Jong-nam. If the name doesn't ring a bell immediately, don't sweat it, I've got you covered. Kim Jong-nam was the half-brother of the current North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. That's right folks, we're talking about a real-life Game of Thrones scenario here, minus the dragons and, well, winter that never quite arrives. Kim Jong-nam was the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, the previous supreme leader of North Korea, and he was once considered the heir apparent to the Hermit Kingdom's notoriously secretive and authoritarian regime. You see, Kim Jong-nam was kind of a big deal. He was born in 1971 and initially had a golden path laid out for him. trained in Switzerland, living abroad, speaking multiple languages. He had all the makings of a future leader. But it seems even in dynastic dictatorships, life doesn't always go as planned. His apparent proclivity for sleuthing out of North Korea to nearby countries under false identities, plus a failed attempt to sneak into Japan using a forged passport to visit Disneyland, yes, you heard that right, earned him a bad reputation at home. Kim Jong-il, not a fan of public embarrassment, soured on the idea of Kim Jong-nam as his successor. So Kim Jong-nam spent years in exile, living rather luxuriously in places like Macau, Beijing, and Singapore. It was presumed by many that he would live out his days quietly sipping on fancy cocktails and spending his father's riches. But fate, or perhaps politics, had other plans. Why was his assassination significant? Oh, I'm glad you asked. You see, this wasn't just a hit. It was a geopolitical bombshell. On February 13, 2017, while at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia, Kim Jong-nam was attacked by two women who smeared a highly toxic nerve agent, VX, on his face. Within minutes, Jong-nam was in distress, and not long after, he was dead. VX is no joke, folks. This is a substance so deadly that it's classified as a weapon of mass destruction by the United Nations. We're talking James Bond levels of villainy here. His death sparked an international outcry. Analysts, journalists, and governments around the world scrambled to piece together who was behind the hit. While many speculated that Kim Jong-un orchestrated the assassination to eliminate a potential rival and send a chilling message to other defectors, the whole saga encompassed intrigue, political chess, and a smorgasbord of Cold War-era cloak-and-dagger acts. So there you have it, a tangled web of family feuds, assassination, and international intrigue. Buckle up, because we're just getting started. Alright everyone, grab your favorite cup of coffee, because it's time to dive into the whirlwind tale of Kim Jong-nam, a man whose life could easily be a plot from a spy thriller novel. Kim Jong-nam was born on May 10, 1971, to Kim Jong-il, the then leader of North Korea, and an actress named Song Hae-rim. Now, you might think being born into North Korea's leading family would be all glamorous parades and instant ramen privileges, but Jong-nam's life was anything but that straightforward. To give you a bit of context here, the Kim family is essentially North Korean royalty. Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-nam's grandfather, founded North Korea. When he passed away, his son Kim Jong-il, the father of Jong-nam, took over. And, just like a Shakespearean drama, the family had its share of intrigue and power struggles. Alright everyone, grab your favorite cup of coffee, because it's time to dive into the whirlwind tale of Kim Jong-nam, a man whose life could easily be a plot from a spy thriller novel. Kim Jong-nam was born on May 10, 1971, to Kim Jong-il, the then leader of North Korea, and an actress named Song Hae-rim. Now, you might think being born into North Korea's leading family would be all glamorous parades and instant ramen privileges, but Jong-nam's life was anything but that straightforward. To give you a bit of context here, the Kim family is essentially North Korean royalty. Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-nam's grandfather, founded North Korea. When he passed away, his son Kim Jong-il, the father of Jong-nam, took over. And, just like a Shakespearean drama, the family had its share of intrigue and power struggles. In his early years, Kim Jong-nam was groomed for greatness. He was sent to elite schools in Switzerland and Russia, where he had the opportunity to see the world outside the hermetically sealed bubble of North Korean propaganda. This international exposure was both a blessing and a curse. While it broadened his horizons, it also made him an increasingly awkward fit for the reclusive, insular regime back home. Jong-nam was initially considered the heir apparent, poised to follow in his father's footsteps. However, things began to unravel due to a few critical missteps. Let's paint a picture of young Jong-nam, known for his love of the high life. He was seen frequenting luxurious spots in Tokyo and spending lavishly, a habit that didn't exactly gel with his father's more austere public persona. The big turning point came in 2001. While traveling to Japan, Kim Jong-nam was caught using a forged passport. His explanation? He simply wanted to visit Disneyland Tokyo. Yes, you heard right, Disneyland. This scandalous incident embarrassed his father and the regime. As you can imagine, the North Korean leadership wasn't too thrilled with the idea of their next possible leader being headline news for a botched theme park escapade. Following the Disneyland debacle, Kim Jong-nam's relationship with his father began to deteriorate rapidly. It also didn't help that his penchant for the more liberal, less controlled lifestyle clashed directly with the totalitarian image his father wanted to maintain. Essentially, Jong-nam became a black sheep, or as close as one can get within such an iron-fisted dynasty. As a result, Kim Jong-nam was pushed aside. The process of grooming a new successor began, and Kim Jong-un, his younger half-brother, would soon enter center stage. Our man Jong-nam? He was effectively exiled and lived a nomadic life. Imagine being banished from the royal court, only with more Wi-Fi and sushi. During his years in exile, Kim Jong-nam lived primarily in China, particularly in Macau. where he enjoyed the casinos and relative anonymity the area provided. He also spent time in Singapore and Malaysia, blending into the cosmopolitan mix of expats and business types. Despite his forced absence from North Korean politics, Yong Nam didn't stay entirely out of the limelight. He became a vocal critic of the North Korean regime. Imagine the bombshell when he openly criticized his half-brother's leadership, calling it a joke, a risky move, even for someone living in exile. Jong Nam's life in exile wasn't entirely void of fear. He constantly lived under the threat of possible revenge from Pyongyang. His anti-regime statements and open lifestyle were walking, talking red flags for a regime known for its paranoia and brutality. So there you have it. Kim Jong-nam's early life was a cocktail of privilege, expectation, scandal, and exile. Born as the potential ruler of North Korea, he ended up sidelined, exiled, and eventually, tragically, assassinated. His tale is a stark reminder of how high the stakes can be in political power plays and the perils of crossing a regime willing to go to any lengths to secure its narrative. Stay tuned, because up next we'll unravel the intricate details leading up to that fateful assassination in Kuala Lumpur. It's got conspiracy, nerve agents, and international intrigue that would make even James Bond raise an eyebrow. Don't go anywhere. Alright folks, buckle up as we dive into the heart-pounding, cloak-and-dagger world of international intrigue. Let's set the stage for the fateful day of February 13, 2017, a day that would send shockwaves across the globe. Picture Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bustling as usual. Among the throngs of travelers was none other than Kim Jong-nam, a man who, despite his enigmatic background, managed to blend into the crowd. Kim Jong-nam was waiting to board a flight to Macau, where he had been living in a sort of self-imposed exile. Life in the fast lane, always looking over your shoulder, can get pretty exhausting, right? But never in a million years could Kim have predicted how his afternoon would unfold. As he's strolling through the departure hall, two women, seemingly oblivious to the tension that society's most wanted man might feel, approach him. These women were Don T. Hung from Vietnam and Siti Aisha from Indonesia. More about these unsuspecting assassins later, but for now, all we need to know is that they had a deadly mission. In an operation that took mere seconds, the women wiped a mysterious liquid on Kim Jong-nam's face. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill prank or misplaced skincare treatment. What they used was VX nerve agent, a toxic substance so powerful, it's classified as a weapon of mass destruction. VX nerve agent works by disrupting the transmission of nerve impulses, leading to muscle paralysis, and eventually, death. Imagine walking through an airport and suddenly feeling your face burn, your vision blur, and your body begin to betray you. That was the horrifying reality for Kim Jong-nam. He immediately sought help, desperate for assistance. He approached airport staff, explaining that someone had attacked him with a liquid. Chaos ensued as he was rushed to the airport clinic. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, it was a futile battle. Within 20 minutes of the attack, Kim Jong-nam's body succumbed to the nerve agent. He was pronounced dead on the way to the hospital. The breezy, ordinary afternoon at Kuala Lumpur International Airport had turned into a scene straight out of a spy novel. But that's not where our story ends. Oh no. The use of VX nerve agent was a significant clue. This isn't something you can pick up at your local drugstore. Its presence immediately suggested state-level involvement, pointing fingers firmly at North Korea. The incident spiraled into an international scandal, raising questions about the dark underbelly of North Korean politics and the lengths to which the regime would go to silence its enemies. The assassins, seemingly innocent young women, claimed they thought they were part of a reality TV show prank. Whether they were manipulated or willing participants is still a topic of debate. But one thing is starkly clear. The assassination of Kim Jong-nam was a meticulously planned and executed operation, dripping with espionage and grim political undertones. From the moment the VX nerve agent was applied to Kim Jong-nam's face to his desperate plea for help and his eventual collapse, the entire episode made for a jaw-dropping tale of betrayal, power, and ruthless efficiency. So that's the harrowing account of how Kim Jong-nam met his tragic and untimely end. An innocent-looking scene at an airport masks a thriller of international proportions, leaving us with more questions than answers about the dangerous world of political machinations. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the murky waters of this assassination and uncover the identities and backgrounds of the women who carried out this chilling act. Don T. Hung and Siti Aisha, the names that might sound like your everyday women, but on February 13, 2017, they became infamous for their roles in the assassination of Kim Jong-nam. Let's dive into who these women were and how they found themselves at the center of a global intrigue. First up is Don T. Hung from Vietnam, a 30-something woman who, at first glance, seemed to be chasing the dream of fame and fortune. She had aspirations of making it big in showbiz, participating in a Vietnamese talent show, and working odd jobs as a nightclub hostess and a cafe worker. Her friends described her as kind and unassuming, hardly someone you'd peg for an assassin. On the other hand, Siti Aisha, hailing from Indonesia, painted a picture of a different kind of struggle. A divorced mother, she moved to Malaysia and worked primarily as a masseuse. Her background was even more modest than Hung's, laced with the hardships of providing for a young son while navigating the uncertainties of her job. So, how did these two seemingly ordinary women get entangled in such a high-stakes political drama? Well, that's where things get decidedly murky and fascinating. The story goes that both women were roped into the plot under the guise of a prank show. This might sound outlandish, but there's evidence suggesting they genuinely believed they were part of a hidden camera prank series. Hung and Aisha were allegedly recruited by North Korean operatives posing as Japanese or Chinese TV producers. They were told that they would be paid handsomely to spray unsuspecting passers-by with harmless liquid as part of the show. Training sessions reinforced the illusion. They practiced in shopping malls and airports, using nothing more harmful than baby oil. It was all made to look so innocent and innocuous, turning their part in the assassination into a cruel twist of reality TV gone wrong. On that fateful day, as Kim Jong-nam walked through the bustling Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Hung and Aisha approached him from different angles. It was a choreography that would make any director proud, except the liquid they used was far more deadly than baby oil. It was VX nerve agent, a substance so potent that mere milligrams are lethal. Hung was the first to approach, smearing the agent on Kim's face, followed swiftly by Aisha doing the same. Unbeknownst to them, they had just executed a hit designed to shock the world. Their arrest soon after was inevitable. They left a trail easier to follow than a Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb path. Malaysian authorities quickly pieced together their movements, identifying the women through surveillance footage. Shock, disbelief, and panic ensued. Under interrogation, both women stuck to their stories of being duped into thinking it was all a prank. Their sincerity was palpable, and their naivety astonishing. They had no idea they were pawns in a deadly game orchestrated by a regime known for its ruthless strategies. As the investigation deepened, so did public interest in these two women. How did two individuals of such humble means and innocent ambitions end up embroiled in international espionage? It's a twist in the tale of Kim Jong-nam's assassination that adds layers of complexity to an already convoluted plot. The recruitment and training of Hung and Aisha underscore the lengths to which powerful entities will go to execute their plans. They exploited the women's vulnerabilities and aspirations, crafting a tragic narrative that intertwines the lives of ordinary people with the brutal realities of geopolitics. So there you have it. Don T. Hung and Siti Aisha, a Vietnamese aspiring starlet and an Indonesian single mother, became key figures in one of the most notorious assassinations of our time. It's a story that raises more questions than it answers, and leaves us pondering the shadows where international power struggles are secretly played out. The assassination of Kim Jong-nam was shocking, not just for its audacity, but for the cascading series of clues and conspiracy theories that followed. So, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of the investigation conducted by the Malaysian authorities and unravel the many threads they had to tug on. First, let's set the scene. February 13, 2017, at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Kim Jong-nam is preparing to board a flight to Macau when he is approached by two women who smear his face with a mysterious substance. Within 20 minutes, Jong-nam is dead. The immediate medical examination reveals he was exposed to VX nerve agent, a highly toxic chemical weapon. So, from the get-go, the Malaysian authorities knew they were dealing with something big. VX isn't your run-of-the-mill poison. It's a chemical weapon banned by the Chemical Weapons Convention. Its presence alone pointed to a sophisticated operation. The first big question for investigators: who were these women? They were quickly identified as Don T. Hung, a Vietnamese national, and Siti Aisha from Indonesia. Both were captured on CCTV calmly walking away from the scene, not exactly what you'd expect from professional assassins. When questioned, Don and Siti claimed they thought they were participating in a prank for a TV show. This seemed absurd, but was it? It turns out, both women had been approached by men in the months leading up to the attack, and tricked into believing they were part of a hidden camera show. They had even participated in a series of pranks where they smeared harmless substances on unsuspecting strangers. These stories, though wild, added a layer of complexity to the investigation. If the women were telling the truth, who were the masterminds behind this convoluted plot? The Malaysian police zeroed in on 4 North Korean men who had been seen with the women prior to the attack. These men, identified as Ri Ji-yu, Hong Song-hak, Oh Jong-gil, and Ri Jae-nam, left Malaysia immediately after the assassination, only fueling suspicions about their involvement. Further digging revealed these suspects had ties to North Korean diplomatic and intelligence circles. This wasn't a prank, it was a calculated political assassination. Next came the diplomatic fallout. North Korea was quick to deny any involvement, claiming the victim was not Kim Jong-nam but someone else, using a different passport. Yet biometric and DNA testing confirmed the identity beyond doubt. one of the most compelling pieces of evidence was the nerve agent itself. VX is not something one can easily obtain, and its use signaled not just intent but a capability associated with state actors. North Korean agents had already been implicated in other siloed assassinations globally, adding weight to the theory that this was a high-level operation. During the investigation, Malaysian authorities gathered an array of evidence, including CCTV footage, testimonies, and forensic data. They pieced together the suspects' timelines, revealing a clear pattern of rehearsals and practice runs supervised by the North Koreans. One theory suggested that the motivation was directly linked to Kim Jong-un's desire to eliminate rivals. Kim Jong-nam had been living under Chinese protection and had shown no public desire to challenge his brother's rule. Yet, his very existence posed a latent threat to Kim Jong-un's grip on power. In the backdrop, some speculated about a potential power play within North Korea itself, involving factions that either supported or opposed Kim Jong-nam. On the international front, the incident triggered a slew of diplomatic responses. Malaysia expelled North Korean diplomats, and North Korea responded in kind. Toughened stances against Pyongyang and increased scrutiny on its foreign operations ensued globally. The investigation also examined the broader network of North Korean operatives. The discovery of a chemistry lab in Malaysia linked to the regime raised questions about how extensive North Korea's reach truly was. Through their embassies and international businesses, it became clear that North Korean agents continued to leverage complex, masked operations beyond their borders. As the investigation wrapped up, it confirmed at least one thing. This was not the work of two amateur pranksters, but a meticulously planned hit orchestrated by a rogue state. The narrative might be fit for a Hollywood thriller, but for Kim Jong-nam, it was a fatal rendezvous with destiny. In deciphering the motives, methods, and implications, Malaysian authorities exposed an intricate global web of espionage, geopolitical machinations, and familial treachery. The assassination of Kim Jong-nam, with all its elaborate layers and dark undertones, remains a chilling reminder of the lengths to which some regimes will go to maintain power. When we think about the assassination of Kim Jong-nam, it's impossible to ignore the seismic political implications that rippled across the globe. This wasn't just a cloak-and-dagger affair. It was a calculated move that shed light on the North Korean regime's inner workings and its relentless efforts to consolidate power. So, what were the political ramifications for North Korea and its international relations? Let's dive in. First, let's consider North Korea's motivations. At the heart of this lie the insecurities of Kim Jong-un, the country's supreme leader. Kim Jong-nam, despite his life in exile, posed a latent threat to his younger half-brother's grip on power. Jong-nam was the eldest son of Kim Jong-il, and at one point the heir apparent. She very existence represented a potential rallying point for dissenters within the North Korean elite, who may have viewed him as a legitimate alternative to the younger Kim's volatile leadership. Kim Jong-un's decision to assassinate his half-brother can be seen as an extreme, yet logical step in a long-standing tradition within the Kim dynasty, rooting out threats to ensure absolute control. By eliminating Jong-nam, Kim Jong-un wiped out a potential rival, sending a clear message to anyone within his regime: defiance will not be tolerated, no matter how far you run or how influential you might be. From an international standpoint, the assassination brought swift condemnation and heightened tensions. Malaysia, where the assassination took place, was one of the few countries that maintained diplomatic relations with North Korea. The murder at Kuala Lumpur International Airport strained those relations to a breaking point. Malaysia recalled its ambassador from Pyongyang and expelled North Korea's ambassador from Kuala Lumpur, catalyzing a diplomatic fallout that saw both nations downgrade their ties significantly. Moreover, the method of the assassination, a brazen attack using VX nerve agent, a banned chemical weapon, flouted international norms and showcased North Korea's recklessness on the global stage. It highlighted North Korea's willingness to employ extreme measures abroad, invoking fears about the regime's potential use of chemical or even nuclear weapons in more significant conflicts. The global response was a mix of outrage and strategic condemnation. Western nations, particularly the United States, seized upon the incident to further isolate North Korea on the international stage. Sanctions were ramped up, choking the already isolated economy further and sending a clear signal that such behavior would not be tolerated. China, North Korea's closest ally and main trading partner, found itself in an awkward position. The assassination underscored the unpredictability of North Korea's actions, pushing China to support some of the sanctions imposed by the United Nations. While China didn't sever its ties with Pyongyang, it did tighten control over the flow of goods and finances, nudging North Korea towards a more cautious stance, at least temporarily. Other Asian nations, especially South Korea and Japan, keenly observed the developments. For South Korea, the assassination reinforced the narrative of Kim Jong-un's brutal regime, justifying their own military and diplomatic preparations against potential aggression from the North. Japan, too, raised its security alerts and aligned more closely with South Korea and the US in its North Korea policy. However, not all implications were hostile. For Kim Jong-un, this ruthless display of power served a dual purpose, bolstering internal loyalty and squelching external threats. Internally, it cemented his image as a leader who would go to any lengths to protect his throne. Externally, it was a strategic move to keep international players guessing about his next move, maintaining an aura of unpredictability that has long defined North Korea's diplomatic strategy. In summary, the assassination of Kim Jong-nam was more than a cold-blooded execution. It was a geopolitical gambit with lasting implications. It strained North Korea's relationships with some of its last remaining allies, tightened the noose of international sanctions, and reaffirmed the volatile and dangerous nature of Kim Jong-un's regime. It was a sinister proclamation that the throne in Pyongyang is ironclad, sending shockwaves through the corridors of international diplomacy. Now, what happens after a high-profile assassination unfolds? Legal drama, of course, and the case of Kim Jong-nam's murder was no exception. Let's dive into the nitty-gritty of the legal proceedings that followed this cloak and dagger tale, starting with the trials of Don Tae-hung and Siti Aisha, the women at the center of the storm. So, let's set the stage. February 2017, Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Kim Jong-nam is attacked with the deadly VX nerve agent. Fast forward, and Hung and Aisha are in the hot seat, charged with murder under Malaysia's penal code, which, by the way, meant they were looking at a mandatory death sentence if found guilty. Yikes! During their trial, both women maintained that they were dupes, tricked into thinking they were participating in a harmless prank for a TV show. Picture it. You think you're pulling off a candid camera moment, and bam, you're facing a murder charge. Their defense posited that they were pawns in a much larger, sinister game probably orchestrated by, you guessed it, North Korean agents. Now, this case was like a legal roller coaster. It wasn't until March 2019, 2 years into the ordeal, that things started really moving. First, Siti Aisha was released after charges against her were unexpectedly dropped. The Indonesian government had been lobbying for her release, and it seemed their relentless diplomatic pressure paid off. However, she didn't get a full acquittal. The charges were dropped and she was allowed to return home. Don Tae-hung's case, however, took a slightly different path. Prosecutors eventually offered her a reduced charge of causing injury with a dangerous weapon as opposed to outright murder. Hung pled guilty to this lesser charge and was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. With credit for time already served, plus customary sentence reductions for good behavior, Hung was released in May 2019 and returned to Vietnam shortly thereafter. Now, how about those involved in the orchestration? Well, 4 North Korean nationals who supposedly masterminded the plot fled Malaysia immediately after the assassination and remain at large. They were wanted men, but they showed uncanny skill in evading capture. Consider them the international fugitives akin to shadows in the night. So, there you have it, a complex, geopolitical jigsaw puzzle, where 2 seemingly ordinary women found themselves as pawns in an extraordinary international plot. With diplomatic wrangling, plea deals, and elusive masterminds, the legal proceedings following Kim Jong-nam's assassination were as riveting as a spy thriller. Remember, while the courtroom might have closed this chapter, the ripples from this high-stakes assassination continue to influence international relations and legal jurisdictions alike. Alright, stay tuned, because we're diving even deeper into the messy political implications next. Kim Jong-nam's legacy is a stark reminder of the perils that come with being a dissenter or defector from a totalitarian regime, particularly one as notorious as North Korea. The tragic end he met in Kuala Lumpur International Airport may have seemed like a scene from a spy thriller, but it was very real, and it underscores a profound, chilling reality. Kim Jong-nam was once considered the heir apparent to his father, Kim Jong-il. However, his preference for a more liberal, westernized lifestyle, combined with a major faux pas involving a forged passport and a visit to Tokyo Disneyland, meant he fell out of favor. Exiled and living a relatively quiet life abroad, he still remained under the shadow of the Kim family's reach. His open criticism of the North Korean regime, calling the dynastic succession a joke to the outside world, marked him not just as a persona non grata, but as a potential threat to his half-brother's rule. His assassination is a harrowing testament to the lengths that authoritarian regimes will go to in silencing opposition voices. The method, using the highly toxic VX nerve agent, was as much a message as it was a method of murder. It demonstrated the regime's capability and willingness to eliminate perceived threats anywhere, at any time, using any means necessary. For defectors and dissidents, Kim Jong-nam's fate is a sobering reminder of the ever-present danger they face. It highlights the pervasive reach of totalitarian regimes, where even physical distance doesn't equate to safety. These regimes often employ elaborate networks of surveillance and espionage to monitor and eventually silence their critics, leveraging fear as a deadly weapon. The international community's reaction to Kim Jong-nam's assassination also underscores the precarious position of defectors. While there was swift condemnation and diplomatic repercussions, the response highlighted the complexities and limitations of international law and diplomatic measures in protecting individuals targeted by such ruthless regimes. It raises questions about what more can and should be done to safeguard those who dare to speak out. Kim Jong-nam's story doesn't end with his death. In death, as much as in life, he became a symbol, not only of the internal power struggles within North Korea, but also of the perilous plight faced by those who challenge autocratic rulers. His legacy serves as a grim reminder of the importance of international solidarity and action in protecting human rights and providing refuge to those fleeing persecution. To many, he will be remembered as a man caught in the web of his family's brutal politics. To others, his unwarranted, violent end will stand as a stark emblem of the dangers that defectors face, an unyielding testament to the lengths to which authoritarian regimes will go to maintain their grip on power. Kim Jong-nam's legacy forces us to confront a critical question. How can we, as a global community, offer better protection and support to those brave enough to stand against tyranny? Alright folks, let's wrap this up. Today we've taken a deep dive into the murky waters of international intrigue and espionage, dissecting the chilling assassination of Kim Jong-nam. We started by getting to know Kim Jong-nam himself, an exiled member of the infamous Kim dynasty who once was the heir apparent to North Korea. We ventured through his fall from grace, his life under the radar, and the twists and turns of his controversial existence. We then unraveled the grim details of that fateful day in February 2017, when Kim Jong-nam met his untimely demise at Kuala Lumpur International Airport. We looked at how the deadly VX nerve agent was used and the complex choreography behind the public attack that shocked the world. Next, we met the unlikely assassins, Don Tae-hung and Siti Aisha, two young women who claimed they thought they were part of a prank TV show. We explored their backgrounds, their alleged recruitment, and the murky network that supposedly brought them to that moment in the crowded airport terminal. From there, we navigated through the painstaking investigation led by Malaysian authorities, examining the clues, the evidence, and the many theories about who was truly pulling the strings. We then pondered the political implications of the assassination, the ripples it sent through international relations, the message it sent to defectors and dissidents, and the probable motivations of the North Korean regime. Lastly, we delved into the legal proceedings that followed. We detailed the courtroom dramas, the deals struck, and the eventual fates of Don Tae-hung and Siti Aisha. Kim Jong-nam's story is a somber reminder of the perils faced by those who become inconvenient to powerful regimes. His legacy underscores the brutal lengths to which totalitarian systems will go to silence their critics. Before we go, a special thanks to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. You can find it on Amazon and Audible. It's a must-read or listen for any true crime aficionado. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of modern history's most audacious assassinations. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. You can find us on all major podcast platforms. And hey, if you liked what you heard, please leave a review or share the episode with your friends. Your support helps us bring more fascinating content to your ears. Until next time, keep questioning, keep curious, and keep safe. This is Roger Heilig, signing off. Hey there, true crime aficionados. Welcome to another gripping episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig, your one-stop shop for all things eerie, chilling, and absolutely fascinating. I'm your host, Roger Heilig, and today's episode is proudly brought to you by Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe, now available on Amazon and Audible. If you're a fan of deep dives into historical highways and byways, then this book is a must-read. Now, let's get the stage set for today's journey. Here on Restless Killers and Mysteries, we dig deep into some of the most bewildering and head-scratching cases in criminal history. From notorious serial killers to unsolved disappearances, we leave no stone unturned and no dark corner unexplored. My mission is to take these often convoluted, mind-bending tales and break them down for you, making sure that by the end of each episode, you're not only riveted but also well-informed. We're about to step into the world of high-profile crime today, talking about the case that kept an entire nation on tenterhooks, the infamous O.J. Simpson trial. We're talking thrilling car chases, courtroom spectacles, and a verdict that left people in shock and awe. Whether you're a seasoned true crime fan or new to the world of unsolved mysteries and courtroom dramas, today's episode promises to be enlightening and utterly absorbing. So grab your detective hat, put on your analytical glasses, and let's dive into the world of Restless Killers and Mysteries. Ready? Ready? Because today, we're throwing ourselves headlong into the case of former football star O.J. Simpson. A man whose life was turned upside down in a flash, leading to one of the most famous, or should I say infamous, murder trials in American history. Before we break into the nitty-gritty details, let's remember that true crime doesn't just entertain. It educates and illuminates the often harsh realities of human nature and our justice system. Stay tuned, and let's dig deeper into this labyrinthine world of murder, mystery, and media frenzy. Let's set the scene for this saga by first asking, who was O.J. Simpson? Now, if you're someone with a passion for football or perhaps old reruns of the Naked Gun movies, the name O.J. Simpson might ring a bell. But for those who aren't acquainted, let's take a little stroll through his past, shall we? O.J. Simpson, whose full name is Orenthal James Simpson, a name you'll probably agree sounds as grand as his early life achievements, was more than just a man. He was an icon. Born on July 9, 1947, in San Francisco, California, O.J. didn't always have it easy. His early years were marked by hardships and an undeniable determination to overcome them. But boy, did he overcome? Let's talk football for a moment. O.J. became a household name with his phenomenal performance on the field, primarily during his time at the University of Southern California, USC. Imagine him dashing down the field with such grace and speed that he earned the nickname the Juice. He wasn't just good, he was phenomenal. In 1968, he won the Heisman Trophy, an award given to the best player in college football. So yes, he was the real deal. Then came the NFL, where O.J. continued to dazzle. Drafted by the Buffalo Bills in 1969, he quickly became a legend. Perhaps his most memorable achievement was in 1973, when he became the first player to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a single season. His prowess earned him numerous accolades, including being named the NFL's Most Valuable Player, MVP. But life for O.J. wasn't confined to the gridiron. After retiring from football, Simpson smoothly transitioned into the entertainment industry, carving out a niche as an actor and commentator. You might remember him from roles in The Towering Inferno, and of course, the bumbling and lovable Detective Nordberg in the Naked Gun series. His role in these comedies might seem trivial now, but back then, O.J. was everywhere. He even did commercials for Hertz rental cars, where he famously sprinted through airports, leaping over obstacles with visible ease. So there you have it, a snapshot of O.J. Simpson's life before everything went south. Charming, accomplished, and seemingly set for life, O.J. had indeed etched his name into the annals of popular American culture. His persona was larger than life, a hero to some, a charismatic star to others. It's important to paint this picture, because understanding his standing in society helps us grasp the magnitude of what came next. Alright folks, let's dive into that fateful night of June 12, 1994, a night that forever changed the lives of many and became a strange, dark chapter in American crime history. On that evening, Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were brutally murdered outside Nicole's condo in Brentwood, a posh neighborhood in Los Angeles. Nicole Brown Simpson was the ex-wife of football star O.J. Simpson, and Ron Goldman was a young waiter and a friend of Nicole's. That night, after putting her kids to bed, Nicole had plans to return a pair of glasses her mother had left at Messaluna, the restaurant where Ron worked. In a bizarre and tragic twist, Ron ended up at Nicole's to drop off the glasses. Little did he know that this simple act of kindness would result in a horrifying end. So, here's the nitty-gritty of that grim discovery. At around 10:40 p.m., a neighbor walking his dog noticed Nicole's Akita, a white dog named Kato, wandering around, smeared with blood on its paws. Intrigued and concerned, he followed the dog back to Nicole's condo, where he stumbled upon the horrific scene. There, lying in the entrance walkway, were the lifeless bodies of Nicole and Ron. Now, brace yourselves, because the crime scene details are pretty unsettling. Nicole was found in a fetal position in a pool of blood, barefoot. Her head was near a step that leads from the driveway to the doorway of her condominium. She had been stabbed multiple times in the head and neck, with one deep gash across her throat so severe it almost decapitated her. Just a few feet away, Ron Goldman's body was discovered, also viciously stabbed. His body was tangled with overgrown foliage, a testament to a fierce struggle. Witnesses and investigators described the scene as almost surreal, dark, silent, and eerily still, contrasting the violent acts that had occurred just moments earlier. There were several clues scattered around that hinted at the brutality of the attack. A knit cap, a left-hand glove, and a bloody footprint were among the disturbing remnants found at the scene. Blood was everywhere, on the walkway, the gate, even on the surrounding foliage, as if the crime itself had painted the town red. Further adding to the bizarre nature of the case, Nicole's neighbors claimed they did not hear any screaming or unusual noises, despite the ferocity of the attack. It was as if the murders had unfolded in total silence. This eerie backdrop set the stage for one of the most publicly scrutinized investigations in American history. Adding another layer to the chilling narrative, autopsies revealed that the time of death was estimated at around 10:15 p.m., just minutes before their bodies were found. This tight timeline only deepened the mystery. Was it possible that the perpetrator was still lurking nearby? And how could such heinous murders have been committed without anyone noticing? As investigators pieced together the events of the night, they began to find more and more leads that pointed to one person, O.J. Simpson. Blood samples lifted from Nicole's condo matched O.J.'s blood type. However, this was just the beginning of the unfolding drama. The murder scene had passed its terror onto the investigators, the media, and the public at large. Stay with me, because as we move forward, we'll dig into the chase, the arrest, and the most explosive trial of the century. You won't want to miss how this macabre night shaped America's view on crime, punishment, and celebrity. Imagine it's a balmy June evening in 1994. The Lakers have finished their regular season games, school's out, and summer is in full swing. Then, out of nowhere, the airwaves break with an unbelievable story. O.J. Simpson, the beloved football icon, is wanted for murder. But hold on, let's rewind a bit to figure out how we got here, shall we? Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman were found brutally murdered on June 12, 1994. A day later, detectives zeroed in on Simpson, who seemed like the prime suspect. Fast forward to June 17th. This is where things get really wild. It starts off like any other day, but it quickly transforms into a media circus. Instead of showing up for his scheduled surrender, O.J. Simpson is nowhere to be found. Hours later, everyone's glued to their TVs, and it's not an episode of Friends or Seinfeld that's getting all the attention. It's O.J. himself. He's spotted in the now infamous white Ford Bronco. And he's not just taking a casual drive, he's being chased by the police. And not just any police, it's the LAPD folks. Behind the wheel is his old buddy, Al Cowlings, known as AC to his friends. OJ is in the back seat, reportedly holding a gun to his own head, while Al's calmly driving, telling the police, "My friend is in the back. He's got a gun to his head." He's upset? He's very upset right now. Now, let's paint you a picture. Imagine highways filled with countless spectators, standing on overpasses, clapping and waving as if they were watching a parade. Imagine the news channels cutting away from the NBA Finals, showcasing nothing but the Broncos' slow pursuit. As the chase continues, meandering through the freeways of Los Angeles at a leisurely 35 miles per hour, the tension just magnifies. People are watching this spectacle unfold, popcorn in hand, as if it was a summer blockbuster. But this is anything but fiction. Hours dragged on, and as day turned to night, all eyes were on TV screens. People gathered in bars, their living rooms, and shopping malls, watching in disbelief as one of America's darling sports heroes seemed to fall from grace in real time. This surreal slow-speed chase captivated the nation like nothing before. Finally, the Bronco pulls into OJ's home in Brentwood. LAPD swarms the place, while the public holds its collective breath. Negotiators move in, trying to coax Simpson out as news helicopters buzz overhead, immortalizing this chaotic ordeal from every possible angle. After a tense standoff, OJ finally emerges. He's whisked away in handcuffs, and the news flashes the headlines, "OJ Simpson in custody." The arrest itself is monumental, but what's equally mind-blowing is how the public and media reacted to it. Some saw OJ's arrest as the end of a tragic story, while others saw it as the beginning of a shocking fall from grace. This was more than just news. It was a defining cultural moment. Once the cuffs were on and Simpson was secured, the media frenzy didn't die down. It ramped up. Talk shows dissected every detail. Newspapers poured gallons of ink over it. And you couldn't strike up a conversation without someone bringing up OJ, the chase, or the murders. In those moments, OJ Simpson ceased to be just a sports star. He became a symbol, a hero to some, a villain to others, and a perfect storm for America's obsession with fame, tragedy, and drama. This wasn't just an arrest, it was the prelude to one of the most famous trials in history, sending shockwaves across the globe and altering the course of media coverage forever. So buckle up, because the roller coaster ride that follows is just as gripping, if not more so, than the chase itself. Alright folks, let's dive into the meat of this episode, the O.J. Simpson trial. Now, this wasn't just any trial. It was dubbed the trial of the century and captivated the entire nation, making it one of the most famous courtroom dramas of all time. So grab your popcorn, because there are some unforgettable moments and jaw-dropping pieces of evidence we need to talk about. First up, let's start with a scene stealer, the glove demonstration. Ah yes, the glove. During the trial, one of the most dramatic moments came when O.J. Simpson was asked by the prosecutors to try on a pair of gloves found at the crime scene and his home, believed to be linked to the murders. Now, these weren't just any gloves. They were leather gloves, and as anyone who has ever worn leather knows, it can be a bit tricky to squeeze into, especially if you're trying to put them on over latex gloves, as O.J. did. So, Simpson tries to pull these gloves on in front of a riveted jury and the onlooking world. He struggles, tugs, and ultimately announces they don't fit. This led to the now iconic line from his defense attorney, Johnny Cochran: "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." The defense argued that the gloves were too small and therefore couldn't belong to Simpson. The prosecution countered that the gloves had shrunk due to being soaked in blood. But the image of O.J. seemingly struggling with those gloves left a lasting impression, feeding into reasonable doubt. Now, we can't talk about the trial without mentioning the DNA evidence. Back in the 90s, DNA forensic science was relatively new to the public. The prosecution presented DNA evidence linking Simpson to the crime scene. Blood found at the scene matched Simpson's, and there were traces of blood in his car and home. The prosecution thought they had a slam dunk case with this scientific evidence. However, the defense team, famously known as the Dream Team for its high-profile lineup of attorneys, launched an all-out attack on the reliability of the DNA evidence. They highlighted alleged contamination issues and chain of custody problems. They even questioned the competence and integrity of the LAPD, suggesting the possibility of tampering. The defense's intense scrutiny of the DNA evidence muddied the waters, adding another layer of doubt. And we simply cannot overlook the testimonies. There were countless witnesses, but a couple truly stand out. One such testimony came from Detective Mark Furman, who discovered the infamous glove at Simpson's estate. During cross-examination, it was revealed that Furman had used racial slurs in the past, which the defense argued showcased racial bias and cast doubts on the integrity of his investigation. The defense painted him as a rogue cop with possible motivations to frame Simpson. Another memorable testimony came from Cato Kellen, the aspiring actor and houseguest living on Simpson's estate. His testimony was both compelling and bizarre. He gave a detailed account of his movements that night, but his scattered and somewhat bumbling style made him an oddly endearing figure to the public. Though he didn't provide a direct link to Simpson's involvement, his testimony added another layer of intrigue to the case. Let's not forget the expert witnesses. Each side brought in forensic specialists to bolster their arguments. One key witness for the defense was Dr. Henry Lee, a renowned forensic scientist who testified that the crime scene appeared compromised, lending more credibility to the defense's tampering theory. Then there was Dr. Michael Baden, brought in to challenge the prosecution's timeline of the murders. His expert opinion suggested that the time of death could not be accurately pinpointed, thus introducing doubt about the timeline presented by the prosecution. The trial also introduced America to the nuances of jury selection and voir dire, the process by which attorneys from both sides select the jurors. The defense skillfully used this process to their advantage, selecting jurors they believed would be more sympathetic to Simpson. The racial composition of the jury, predominantly African American, became a focal point of much discussion and speculation regarding how they might view the evidence and testimonies. Another fascinating element was the extensive use of visual aids and graphics by both sides to explain complex evidence and forensic details to the jury. Charts, graphs, and animated reconstructions turned the courtroom into a battleground of data visualization, helping jurors and the millions watching at home better understand the case. In the end, the defense strategy hinged on creating a narrative of doubt about the integrity of the evidence, doubt about the investigators, doubt about the timeline. They skillfully deflected and reframed each piece of incriminating evidence, leaving the jury unsure about Simpson's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Ladies and gents, the trial of O.J. Simpson was a masterclass in legal strategy, media influence, and theatrical courtroom drama. It wasn't just about the facts and evidence. It was about storytelling, charisma, and navigating the complex interplay of race, celebrity, and justice in America. And with the glove demonstration, DNA debates, and relentless cross-examinations, the trial truly earned its place in history. So as you mull over these trial highlights, remember, sometimes it's not just about what you know, but what you can sell to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, after months of intense courtroom drama that captivated the world, we finally arrive at the climactic moment, the verdict. On October 3, 1995, the jury delivered their decision. In what's now considered one of the most controversial verdicts in American history, O.J. Simpson was found not guilty of the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Now, you might be wondering how a case with such seemingly strong evidence could end this way. The answer lies in a complex mix of courtroom strategy, public opinion, and the broader societal context of the time. First, let's talk about the division in public response. The nation seemed to split right down the middle. On one hand, many in the African American community saw the verdict as a long overdue triumph against a historically biased legal system. After years of high-profile police misconduct cases such as Rodney King, Simpson's acquittal felt like a moment of justice for a community that had endured systemic racism and brutality. According to polls at the time, a significant majority of African Americans believed in O.J.'s innocence or felt excited about the not guilty verdict. On the other hand, many white Americans and others believed O.J. Simpson was undoubtedly guilty, and that the verdict was a miscarriage of justice. For them, it was inconceivable that O.J. could walk free given the mountain of evidence presented during the trial, such as DNA evidence, the infamous blood-stained gloves, and his tumultuous history with Nicole. Polls among white Americans showed a stark contrast, with a majority believing that Simpson had indeed committed the murders. It wasn't just about O.J. Simpson. This trial forced America to confront its deep-seated racial issues. It exposed the realities of how differently black and white communities experienced and perceived the justice system. The media played a crucial role in magnifying these divisions. After the trial, you couldn't turn on a television without seeing discussion panels, news reports, and talk shows dissecting every aspect of the case, often through a racial lens. Beyond the racial implications, the trial also influenced societal views on celebrity and justice. O.J. Simpson's fame added an extra layer of complexity. A former football star and actor, he had been a beloved public figure. Some felt that his celebrity status and wealth allowed him to assemble a so-called dream team of defense attorneys, which included high-powered lawyers like Johnny Cochran and Robert Shapiro. This team's expert handling of evidence and effective counter-narrative to the prosecution made a significant impact on the jury's decision. In the end, O.J. Simpson's acquittal led to widespread disbelief and further polarized an already divided nation. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse and around the country, some celebrating and others chanting in outrage. The media frenzy over the trial's conclusion lasted for weeks, if not months, scrutinizing every potential miscarriage of justice and every racial undertone of the case. The trial's verdict remains a subject of debate even years later, embodying a complex web of legal intricacies, racial tension, and media influence. While O.J. Simpson's not guilty verdict might have closed the case legally, its societal repercussions continue to echo through the years, perpetually questioning the balance between justice, fairness, and celebrity. So, whether you see the verdict as a moment of justice served or as a grave error, one thing is for sure. The O.J. Simpson trial and its outcome will forever remain etched in the annals of American history, a profound reflection of the era's social complexities and its ongoing impact on the nation's discourse regarding race and justice. Let's dive into the aftermath and legacy of the O.J. Simpson trial. Far from vanishing into the annals of history once the verdict was read, the repercussions of this high-profile case echoed for years, and arguably, still do. First, let's talk about the civil suits. Although O.J. Simpson was acquitted of the murder charges in the criminal trial, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman filed a civil wrongful death suit against him in 1997. The burden of proof in civil cases is lower than in criminal cases. So, instead of beyond a reasonable doubt, the jury only had to find a preponderance of evidence to hold Simpson liable. And indeed, they did. Simpson was ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages to the victims' families. But did he pay up? Not quite. Despite the judgment, collecting the money proved challenging. Simpson's financial picture was murky, with much of his income shielded from collection. He has notably declared bankruptcy, and efforts continue to this day to collect on that judgment. Now, let's talk about O.J. Simpson's later life. In the years following the trial, Simpson's life was riddled with legal troubles. He faced repeated allegations of criminal behavior, including a highly publicized robbery in Las Vegas in 2007, where he and a group of men attempted to reclaim sports memorabilia he claimed was stolen from him. This time, he wasn't so lucky in court. He was found guilty on charges of armed robbery and kidnapping and served 9 years before being released on parole in 2017. Apart from his continued run-ins with the law, Simpson's public image took a nosedive. He went from being a beloved sports figure and entertainment personality to one of the most controversial figures in American history. His every move was scrutinized, from appearing in infomercials to a baffling hypothetical confession book titled If I Did It. The trial also left an indelible mark on how media covers courtroom cases. It was among the first trials to be extensively televised, turning proceedings into a form of daytime entertainment. This blend of real-life drama and media spectacle paved the way for what we now know as court TV. It set a precedent for the way future high-profile cases would be covered, influencing everything from the treatment of suspects to the intensity of public opinion. The trial brought to light issues of race, celebrity, and the American justice system, resonating deeply with a divided nation. Lastly, let's not forget the social and cultural impact. The O.J. trial stirred a nationwide conversation on race relations. The verdict revealed stark divides, with polls showing a significant difference in opinion between black and white Americans regarding Simpson's innocence. These conversations weren't just about the trial itself, but touched broader issues, such as systemic racism, police behavior, and equal justice. In summary, the O.J. Simpson trial didn't just end when the gavel fell. It left an intricate web of legal, social, and cultural threads that continue to be unraveled even today. The trial and its aftermath showcase the complexities of fame, race, and media ethics, forever changing how we view criminal justice in America. And that, my dear listeners, wraps up our deep dive into one of the most sensational trials in modern history, the O.J. Simpson case. We've journeyed from O.J.'s glory days as a football star and popular figure to the shocking events of June 12, 1994. We've navigated through the crime scene discoveries, the dramatic Bronco chase, and the media frenzy that followed. We've analyzed key moments in the courtroom, such as that unforgettable glove demonstration, and we've touched upon the profound societal impacts the trial had, particularly regarding race relations and media coverage. Thank you for joining me on this fascinating journey through the twists and turns of this high-profile case. I hope you found this episode as gripping as I did. A huge thank you goes out to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever, by A.M. Wolfe. If you're intrigued by history-changing events and love a good mystery, You won't want to miss this enlightening read. It's available now on Amazon and Audible. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Your support helps keep Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig going strong. Until next time, stay curious and keep unraveling the mysteries of our restless world. Welcome everyone, to another electrifying episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. I'm your host, Roger Heilig, and today we've got a riveting story that's been wrapped in controversy, intrigue, and a bit of poetic tragedy. Yep, you guessed it folks, we're diving deep into the unsolved murders of two of the most iconic figures in hip-hop history, Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., also known as Biggie Smalls. Now, before we unlock the mysteries behind these shocking murders, I'd like to give a shout out to our amazing sponsor for today's episode, Beyond the Grassy Knoll, How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe. You can find this insightful read on Amazon and Audible. If you think today's topic is fascinating, wait till you dive into the pages of that book. It's an eye-opener, trust me. Alright folks, let's get this show on the road. Imagine this, it's the 1990s. The world of rap and hip-hop is exploding with creativity, attitude, and a raw, unfiltered voice of the streets. It's a time of bold statements and iconic tracks that still resonate today. Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. weren't just rappers, they were cultural beacons, firestorm personalities who captured the zeitgeist of an entire generation. Their lyrics weren't just about the rhythm and the rhyme, they were about life, struggle, ambition, and survival. But amid their monumental successes, an undercurrent of rivalry and tension simmered. Tragically, this all came crashing down, leading to their untimely and still largely unexplained deaths. Tupac was gunned down in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas in 1996, and just 6 months later, Biggie met a similar fate in Los Angeles. These aren't just tales from the past, they are living, breathing mysteries that continue to haunt us, raising questions and theories that keep us up at night. Who was responsible? Why did the investigations hit dead ends? What do we still not know? In today's episode, we'll journey through the lives and careers of these two legends, explore the rise of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, and delve into the shadowy circumstances of their murders. We'll also investigate why these cases remain unsolved decades later, and ponder the lasting impact these tragic events had on the music industry and beyond. So buckle up, true crime aficionados, and get ready to dive deep into one of hip-hop's most infamous real-life sagas. Because here on Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig, we're about to explore the untold stories that keep the world restless. Let's set the wheels in motion by diving into the remarkable lives of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. Picture this. It's the 90s, the golden era of hip-hop. It's a time of baggy jeans, bold rhymes, and booming beats. Within this vibrant scene, two names reign supreme, Tupac and Biggie. But who exactly were these legendary figures, and how did their background shape their meteoric careers? First off, Tupac Shakur, or Tupac as he's widely known, was a whirlwind of talent and charisma. Born in 1971 in East Harlem, New York, Tupac was no stranger to struggle. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was a member of the Black Panther Party, a movement fighting for African American rights. This activism undoubtedly colored Tupac's worldview and ignited a spark for the social justice themes that would thread through his music. By the time he emerged on the scene, he was not just a rapper, he was a poet, actor, and messenger wrapped into one explosive package. With hits like California Love and Changes, Tupac's lyrics painted vivid pictures of life, love, and hardship, resonating deeply with listeners across the globe. Conversely, we've got Christopher Wallace, better known as the notorious B.I.G. or simply Biggie. Born in Brooklyn in 1972, Biggie came from a Jamaican immigrant household and was raised single-handedly by his mother, Valletta Wallace. Biggie's journey was one of grit and grind. You'd find him at street corners, battle rapping his way through the harsh reality of Brooklyn streets. His narrative style and deep melodic voice set him apart. Tracks like Juicy and Big Papa are still anthems today. Biggie personified the rags to riches story and gave voice to his experiences in the rough and tumble world around him. Both emerged during a time when hip-hop was evolving from an underground movement into a colossal force that could no longer be ignored. In the cultural melting pots of New York and Los Angeles, these two rappers rose to prominence, encapsulating the essence of their cities. They were not merely artists, they were cultural icons, each embodying the spirit of their respective coastlines. It's crucial to grasp the social backdrop. The 90s were an era of raw expression and rebellion. Racism, economic disparity, and the struggle for identity in an America that often felt as though it was forgetting its urban youth were catalysts. Amid all this, Tupac and Biggie offered a mirror to society, reflecting both the triumphs and tribulations of Black America. Their music spoke of dreams and despair, thug life and ambition, unparalleled success, and unfortunate downfall. Tupac and Biggie's stories are not just those of individual artists, but a saga reflecting the struggles and hopes of an entire generation. Their influence stretched beyond music, seeping into movies, fashion, and even the political landscape. When you speak of the 90s hip-hop scene, you cannot do so without conjuring images of Tupac's fiery performances and Biggie's unparalleled lyrical flow. So, with that, buckle up as we delve deeper into their journeys, setting the stage for the stories, mysteries, and ripple effects that followed. We're just scratching the surface, and trust me, there's a lot more to uncover about the enigmatic lives and lasting legacies of these two rap titans. We all know that behind every iconic success story, there's a journey filled with hard work, talent, and a sprinkle of serendipity, and the stories of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. are no different. Let's buckle up as we rise to the heady heights of fame, accompanied by the beats and rhymes that defined an entire era, starting with Tupac Shakur, or Tupac as he was famously known. Born in 1971, he was the embodiment of an artist with something to say. His debut album, Tupacalypse Now, hit the shelves in 1991, signaling the arrival of a force to be reckoned with. Even in his early career, Tupac's lyrics weren't just for bopping along. They were powerful narratives about social issues, inequality, and the struggles of African American life. Think Brenda's Got a Baby and you'll get the picture. This was a man who used his platform to highlight hard truths. Then came the avalanche of hits, Keep Your Head Up, I Get Around, and the masterful Dear Mama. His music was more than just chart-topping tunes. It was poetry set to beats that resonated with people far beyond the typical rap audience. Tupac's charm, charisma, and outspoken nature quickly cemented his place in the pantheon of rap gods. And let's be real, his enigmatic personality offstage only added layers to his legend. A poet, a rebel, a man whose voice echoed the frustrations and hopes of many. Now, let's flip the vinyl to the East Coast and meet Christopher Wallace, better known by his moniker, the notorious B.I.G., or simply Biggie. Born in 1972, Biggie's entrance into the rap scene was like a giant footprint on fresh snow, unmistakable and profound. His debut album, Ready to Die, dropped in 1994 and was a game-changer. Tracks like Juicy and Big Papa showcased his lyrical prowess, weaving autobiographical elements with a flair that made you sit up and listen. Biggie's deep, smooth voice narrated the hustler's life, his lyrics a raw depiction of street dreams and stark realities. He wasn't just about the glitz and glamour. His storytelling was vivid, painting pictures of both triumph and turmoil. Coupled with his iconic, laid-back delivery and a knack for crafting unforgettable hooks, Biggie's star rose quickly and impressively. What truly set Tupac and Biggie apart from their peers wasn't just their ability to churn out hits, though they did that in spades, but their unique artistic styles and personalities that captivated the masses. Tupac was the politically conscious poet and thespian. Biggie, the storytelling savant with a captivating flow. In a few short years, both rappers transcended the role of mere musicians to become cultural icons. They impacted the music industry profoundly, not just through their records but through the movements they inspired, the styles they defined, and the bold personalities they offered up on the world stage. Their fame wasn't solely built on their musical genius. It was built on the stories they told and how they told them, shaping the identities of millions of fans who saw their own lives reflected in the verses they rapped. And as the beats of their greatest hits still pulse through speakers worldwide, it's clear that Tupac and Biggie were more than just entertainers. They were the voices of a generation. Now, let's talk about the legendary feud that shaped the 90s music scene. The infamous East Coast-West Coast rivalry between Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. It's almost Shakespearean in its tragedy and drama, and it played out under the spotlight of fame, fortune, and fast-paced lives. But how did it all begin? Let's rewind to the early 90s. Tupac, a West Coast rapper, and Biggie, an East Coast star, were initially friends. They bonded over their shared struggles and dreams at the height of a thriving hip-hop scene. But as their careers skyrocketed, so did the tension between them, fueled by misunderstandings, bold claims, and of course, the media. One of the key events that sparked the beef was the 1994 Quad recording studio shooting. Tupac was shot 5 times in the lobby of the New York studio, and he believed that Biggie and his entourage were involved, or at the very least, knew more than they were letting on. Biggie denied the accusations, but the wound had been cut too deep. Adding kerosene to the fire, Biggie released the song Who Shot Ya? Shortly after the incident. Although Biggie insisted that the track was not about Tupac, the timing fueled speculations and solidified Tupac's suspicions. Tupac fired back with Hit 'Em Up, a venomous track that left no doubt about his hostility toward Biggie and the entire East Coast rap community. This rivalry became more than just a personal feud. It evolved into an all-out war between two coasts. Record labels played their parts too, with Death Row Records under Suge Knight on the West Coast and Bad Boy Records led by Sean Puff Daddy Combs on the East Coast stoking the flames. Both labels thrived on the controversy, which drove album sales and public interest to sky-high levels. High-profile incidents, like the 1995 Source Awards where Suge Knight took a jab at Puff Daddy in front of a riled-up audience, only cemented the bitter divide. Tupac and Biggie were at the epicenter. their every word and action scrutinized by fans, media, and even law enforcement. Sadly, this fiery rivalry had deadly consequences. Both Tupac and Biggie were gunned down in drive-by shootings within months of each other. Tupac in September 1996, Biggie in March 1997. Their deaths shocked the world and left a void in the hip-hop community that still resonates today. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry was a dramatic, tragic chapter in music history. It forever altered the landscape of hip-hop, leaving behind a legacy of extraordinary music overshadowed by extraordinary loss. Superstars and ordinary fans alike are still fascinated by this period, reflecting on what could have been if misunderstandings and hostilities hadn't spiraled out of control. Alright, let's dive into the dark, mystifying events that took place on the grim nights when we lost two of the most iconic figures in the rap and hip-hop world, Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. Buckle up, because this tale is filled with intrigue, heartbreak, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. First, let's travel back to September 7, 1996. The neon glow of Las Vegas was dazzling. The casinos were packed, and the air was buzzing with energy. Tupac Shakur had just attended a Mike Tyson boxing match at the MGM Grand with Suge Knight, the head honcho of Death Row Records. Post-fight, things took a sinister turn. Tupac and Suge got into a heated altercation with a man named Orlando Anderson, a reputed Southside Compton Crip. Little did anyone know, this seemingly isolated brawl would set the stage for an even darker chapter. Later that night, Tupac and Suge were cruising down Las Vegas Boulevard in a black BMW, the kind you'd expect a rap superstar to roll in, when a white Cadillac pulled up beside them. The window slid down, and in a flash, shots rang out. Tupac was hit 4 times, once in the arm, once in the thigh, and twice in the chest with one bullet puncturing his lung. It was chaotic, it was brutal, and it was over in seconds. Suge Knight miraculously escaped with minor injuries, but Tupac wasn't so lucky. He was rushed to the University Medical Center of Southern Nevada and held on for 6 days. But on September 13, 1996, the world lost Tupac Shakur. The immediate reaction was a mix of shock, grief, and a burning question. Who did it and why? The streets echoed with theories. Some pointed fingers at gang rivalries, others whispered about record label wars. Fans and fellow artists poured their hearts out. Memorials sprang up, and tributes flowed in. Tupac had a voice that resonated with millions, and his sudden, violent departure left a gaping hole in the music community. Fast forward 6 months to March 9, 1997. The setting changes from the bright lights of Las Vegas to the bustling streets of Los Angeles. The notorious B.I.G., or Biggie Smalls as many affectionately called him, had just attended a Soul Train Awards after-party. The party was lit, full of celebrities, and pumping with the latest beats. Little did anyone suspect that danger was lurking nearby. After the party, Biggie's entourage left in a convoy of SUVs. At around 12:45 a.m., they stopped at a red light at the corner of Wilshire Boulevard and South Fairfax Avenue. Suddenly, a dark Chevrolet Impala rolled up next to Biggie's vehicle. The driver, an unidentified African-American male in a blue suit and bow tie, drew a 9mm blue steel pistol and fired. Biggie was hit 4 times, with the fatal shot delivered to his chest. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center but was pronounced dead at 1:15 a.m. The aftermath of Biggie's murder mirrored that of Tupac's, an avalanche of sorrow and speculations. The rap community was stunned. Biggie wasn't just a heavyweight in hip-hop, he was a cultural titan. Vigils were held, his music soared up the charts posthumously, and yet again the burning question resurfaced: who was responsible? For both Tupac and Biggie, the legacy of their murders isn't just the loss of life, it's a complex and deeply embedded chapter in the cultural fabric of hip-hop. The immediate reactions from fans and artists were profound. While the mainstream media dissected every possible angle, from gang clashes to East Coast-West Coast rivalries, the truth remained elusive. These tragic events didn't just snatch away 2 brilliant artists, they underscored the volatile intersection of music, culture, and crime. The gravity of their deaths sent shockwaves that transformed the industry. Record labels re-evaluated how they managed their artists. Musicians began to be wary of the dangerous fame game, and the audience mourned the end of an era marked by 2 transcendent talents. In the end, the chilling reality is that the murders of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. remain unsolved mysteries. Ghosts of a time when the beats rolled hard, the lyrics cut deep, and the streets were far from safe. The impact of these deaths? It is still felt today, echoing through the corridors of hip-hop history, leaving behind voids that no artist, no matter how gifted, could ever fully fill. When it comes to the unsolved murders of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., the phrase "the truth is stranger than fiction" feels like an understatement. The investigations surrounding their deaths have left us with more questions than answers, numerous conspiracy theories, and a trail of breadcrumbs that seemingly lead nowhere definitive. Let's start with Tupac. On September 7, 1996, Tupac was in Las Vegas, attending a Mike Tyson boxing match. After the fight, Tupac and his entourage, including Suge Knight, head of Death Row Records, were driving to a nightclub. Tupac was in the passenger seat of a black BMW driven by Knight. At a stoplight, a white Cadillac pulled up and opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times and succumbed to his injuries 6 days later. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department launched an investigation, but it was fraught with challenges. Witnesses were uncooperative. Street code meant that talking to the police was out of the question, and leads dried up quickly. Despite numerous theories ranging from gang retaliation to internal music industry politics, the case remains unsolved. Now let's talk about Biggie, also known as the notorious B.I.G. On March 9, 1997, almost exactly 6 months after Tupac's death, Biggie was in Los Angeles, attending a party thrown by Vibe magazine. After the event, he and his entourage were stopped at a red light in a GMC Suburban when a dark-colored Chevy Impala pulled up and its driver fired shots. Biggie was hit 4 times. He was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Similar to Tupac's case, the LAPD faced obstacles in their investigation. Potential key witnesses either couldn't or wouldn't talk. There have been numerous theories and suspects, including dirty cops and rival gang members, but evidence that could pin down the perpetrator has never materialized. One of the most tantalizing theories involves the possibility of a connection between the 2 murders. Some suggest that Suge Knight orchestrated Biggie's murder in retaliation for Tupac's death. Investigative journalist Randall Sullivan and former LAPD detective Russell Poole have both posited this angle. Poole, in particular, spent years researching and maintaining that corrupt LAPD officers who worked for Death Row Records were involved in Biggie's killing. Another angle suggests that Tupac's death stemmed from a confrontation earlier that night involving Anderson, a member of the Southside Compton Crips, who supposedly had a personal vendetta against Tupac. Anderson was even named as a suspect by his own family members. However, Anderson was killed in an unrelated gang shooting in 1998 before solid evidence could tie him conclusively to Tupac's death. As if that's not enough to scramble your brain, add the fact that in the years following their deaths, both Tupac and Biggie have been the subjects of documentaries, books, and extensive investigative journalism. Some of these sources offer credible insights, while others tread into speculative territories that only serve to muddy the waters further. There's also the aspect of the FBI and their interest in the cases, driven largely by the fear that the East Coast-West Coast rap rivalry could escalate into a larger violent conflict. However, any files declassified have yet to provide a smoking gun that would solve either case definitively. In the end, what makes these murders unsolved isn't just the lack of evidence, it's the labyrinth of deceit, loyalty to street codes, and potentially corrupt systems that seem designed to keep the truth buried. Who was behind it all? We may never have a concrete answer, but as long as there are passionate fans and dedicated investigators, the search for justice for Tupac and Biggie continues. Their tragic ends have only amplified their legends, leaving us with an enduring mystery that, despite all efforts, refuses to unravel cleanly. And perhaps, that unresolved tension is part of why we remain so captivated by their stories. On the flip side, you have Biggie Smalls, aka the notorious B.I.G. With his impeccable flow and mesmerizing storytelling, Biggie brought an unparalleled level of artistry to hip-hop. Tracks such as Juicy and Big Papa not only ruled the airwaves, but also set a gold standard for what rap could achieve, both musically and commercially. Biggie's talent for blending gangster rap with personal vulnerability made him stand out in a genre often characterized by braggadocio. Even today, you'll find his influence in the works of numerous artists who pay homage by adopting his narrative techniques and ingenious wordplay. The deaths of these 2 titans didn't halt their influence. Quite the contrary, it amplified it. Their untimely endings added an aura of mystique, turning them into legends whose stories are endlessly dissected and analyzed. Their music remains evergreen, their lyrics quoted by fans and fellow artists alike. And let's not overlook the biopics, documentaries, and countless conspiracy theories that keep their names in the limelight. Tupac and Biggie aren't just historical figures in the rap community. They are present tense, always relevant, always influential. In a broader cultural sense, Tupac and Biggie's deaths highlighted the intense divisions within the hip-hop community and underscored the need for unity and progress. Their stories helped shape discussions around violence, artistry, and accountability that continue to this day. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry they were embroiled in has since mellowed, but it forever changed the landscape of hip-hop, pushing artists to go beyond regional rivalries and embrace a more global perspective. Modern rappers like Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and Drake have all cited Tupac and Biggie as influences, and their styles echo the social consciousness and storytelling prowess that Tupac and Biggie brought to the table. Whether it's through sampling their tracks, quoting them in lyrics, or carrying forward their ethos, today's artists keep the torch burning in new and creative ways. Finally, let's not forget the enduring influence on fashion and lifestyle. The streetwear and iconic looks popularized by these two rappers are still in vogue. From Tupac's bandanas and penchant for thug life tattoos, to Biggie's signature Coogi sweaters and Versace shades, their style sensibilities continue to be echoed in today's fashion trends. In summary, Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G. didn't just touch lives in the 90s, they sculpted a legacy that transcends time. Their music, their messages, and their mystique continue to resonate, reminding us that legends aren't made in life, but in how they're remembered after death. And if their influence on modern artists, ongoing cultural relevance, and indomitable spirit are any indication, Tupac and Biggie will be remembered for generations to come. Alright folks, that brings us to the end of today's deep dive into one of hip-hop's most tragic and enduring mysteries. We've walked through the lives of Tupac Shakur and the notorious B.I.G., two titans of the music world who not only revolutionized rap but also became icons of cultural and social change. Their contrasting styles, from Tupac's raw, poetic rebellion to Biggie's smooth, masterful storytelling, captivated millions. We explored the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, a feud that went beyond personal vendettas and became a symbol of a divided music community. It was a tension that culminated in two violent, senseless acts that still leave us asking, why? The circumstances surrounding their murders are both haunting and frustratingly elusive. Tupac, gunned down in the heart of Las Vegas, and Biggie, struck down in Los Angeles, both met violent ends that remain shrouded in mystery. Investigations have been thorough yet fruitless, leaving their deaths as unsolved enigmas that continue to perplex fans, detectives, and conspiracy theorists alike. We also touched on the endless theories and potential suspects, from gang affiliations to possible law enforcement corruption, each more complex than the last. It's a sobering reminder of how much we still don't know, even after all these years. And what about their legacies? Despite their shortened lives, Tupac and Biggie's influence is immortal. Their music continues to resonate, inspiring new generations of artists and maintaining a critical role in our cultural dialogue. Through their art, they live on, touching lives and igniting conversations even today. So why do these cases still hold us in their grip? Maybe it's because they remind us of the fragility of life, or perhaps it's the stark reality of talent lost too soon. Whatever the reason, Tupac and Biggie's stories are not just chapters in music history. They are ongoing narratives that challenge us, intrigue us, and compel us to keep searching for the answers. Before we wrap up, I want to extend a big thank you to our sponsor, Beyond the Grassy Knoll: How JFK's Death Changed American Society Forever by A.M. Wolfe, available on Amazon and Audible. Dive into another historical mystery and see how it shaped the nation we live in today. That's all for this episode of Restless Killers and Mysteries with Roger Heilig. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the lives and untimely deaths of two of rap's greatest legends. Keep your curiosity alive, and until next time, stay restless.
Help Roger Heilig escape eviction and find stable housing. Hello everyone. My name is Isabel Carroll, at Isabel Carroll 7 on TikTok, and I'm writing on behalf of my good friend Roger Heilig. Roger is a terrific person who runs the YouTube channel Sparks Cash, where he provides useful content and interacts with a fantastic community. Despite his best efforts, Roger is currently in a critical predicament and requires our quick assistance to avoid eviction. Roger's story. 2 years ago, Roger underwent extensive neck surgery to repair 3 vertebrae. This operation was necessary to ease the tremendous discomfort he had been enduring, and while it was effective in reducing his pain, it did not restore his strength or stamina. As a result, Roger's daily existence has become incredibly difficult. He struggles with tasks that most of us take for granted. He can only lift 50 pounds and can't stand for more than an hour without growing weary. This has greatly decreased his ability to work and earn an income, placing him in a perilous financial situation. Roger's disability has imposed serious constraints on his life. Simple activities like grocery shopping, cleaning, or even standing to cook a meal are difficult for him. His energy levels dip quickly, making it challenging to maintain any continuous sort of employment. This has been a devastating reality for someone who was once vivacious and full of life. Despite these hurdles, Roger remains a beacon of positivity, consistently encouraging others through his YouTube channel. The current crisis. Roger has struggled to earn rent due to his physical limitations. He is now 3 months behind on his rent, and his landlord has handed him a final notice to vacate his home today. Despite exhausting all feasible choices and doing his best to rectify the situation, Roger is now on the edge of becoming homeless. This is a critical moment, and we urgently need your aid to keep Roger in his house and locate stable accommodation. Eviction is not just about losing a place to live, it's about the loss of security, stability, and the psychological toll it takes on a person. For Roger, this prospect is particularly dire considering his physical condition. Moving out and finding a new apartment under such stressful circumstances can further impair his health. We need to act immediately to prevent this catastrophic outcome. Our goal: we intend to raise $2,000 to cover Roger's unpaid rent and build a cushion to assist him in getting back on his feet. Here is a thorough explanation of how the funds will be allocated. $1,500 for 3 months of outstanding rent. This donation will directly pay off Roger's late rent, ensuring he can stay in his house and avoid eviction. $500 for current living expenses and future rent. This will help cover immediate living costs and create a small buffer for future rent payments, while Roger works to stabilize his financial situation. Every donation, no matter how small, will have a tremendous effect on Roger's life and protect him from facing the painful reality of homelessness. Your contribution will provide Roger with the breathing room he needs to heal and regain some normalcy in his life. Why your support matters. Roger has always been a source of strength and enjoyment in his community. He has touched many people's lives by sharing crucial insights and developing a helpful online community through his YouTube channel, Sparks Cash. Now it's our job to help him in his time of need. Personal connection. Knowing that others care about him can give Roger enormous emotional support and encouragement during this challenging time. Immediate relief. The donations will ease the immediate stress and concern of approaching homelessness, allowing Roger to focus on his health and well-being. Long-term stability. Assisting Roger in getting secure housing will provide him with the stability he requires to work on improving his health and ultimately return to a more normal and productive life. How can you help? Donate. Please consider sponsoring our GoFundMe effort. Every dollar counts and pushes us closer to our goal. Your donation can make an immediate and meaningful difference in Roger's life. Share. Spread the news by sharing this campaign with your friends, family, and social networks. The more people are aware of Roger's struggle, the higher our chances of attaining our goal. Use social media sites, email, and word of mouth to reach as many people as possible. Engage. Leave Roger a supportive comment or message. Your words of encouragement can inspire him with the strength to keep going and remind him that he is not alone in this battle. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to read Roger's story and consider assisting him during this tough time. Your kindness and goodwill mean everything to us, and we really appreciate any aid you can offer. Roger's position is grave, and every bit of support helps. Together, we can make a major difference in his life. Updates and transparency. We will keep you updated on the campaign's progress and how the funds are used. Transparency is vital to us, and we want you to understand exactly how your contributions are influencing Roger's life. Regular updates will be released to keep you informed about how Roger is doing and the positive changes your support is making. Final words. Roger's predicament is severe, and time is of the essence. With your help, we can save him from being evicted and facing homelessness. Together, we can provide Roger with the aid he needs to get through this terrible phase and strive towards a more stable and secure future. Please help me support Roger by donating to our GoFundMe campaign and sharing his story. Your support means everything. Every act of compassion, whether it's a gift or sharing our campaign, puts us one step closer to helping Roger find stability and serenity. Thank you so much for your generosity and compassion. Sincerely, Isabel Carroll, at Isabel Carroll 7 on TikTok.